Yeah, it's kind of a mixture. I mean, my words are dark. It's just kind of a mixture, so maybe a toner tomorrow when she tests it. I gotta take that.
All right, what did you want to say, Joyce?
She said we have to leave it on because we're a hybrid tonight and the people that are,
Watching?
yeah, something like that.
So we can, basically, because that's how we're gonna view the
Other.
Well, I'm
Yes.
not gonna use it, but
Well, that's
we
what I
have,
thought.
I think
That's why
he's gonna run into the
that I
same
won't
issues.
put mine on because.
Okay, there.
Mr. Waffle, I've never been able to see. Oh, okay, I was gonna say, because he's got, and that's what I used to always say, "Hey, remember, I didn't see you."
right.
Somebody, my share.
No, but planning commission, I mean, planning though.
It's it. You
Oh,
can,
you think-
mine's
I mean,
working, we
mine
can work
here?
on mine after.
We hear you, Beth.
Well, he doesn't, I guess Trevor can handle it.
Oh, we are, okay.
Public hearing. Okay, yeah.
Hey, hey, hey.
So I guess.
It's good to see people in person.
You know, Trevor can answer questions.
I hear you, Greg.
That's probably right, because we do have of his rezoning. One's his, one's the mayor's.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you, Beth. We're good.
Anybody can ask questions.
Take this off.
Can you hear me?
Say what?
Pardon?
That was Beth Doherty.
I know, I heard my name.
She wanted to know if you could hear her. Beth.
Oh, yes, absolutely. All the tablet microphones need to be muted.
Are you sure it's not these?
I hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes. She can't hear us. Beth, we can hear you.
Okay, you're all muted, everyone, thank you very much.
We have to stay muted.
I didn't print it up because usually
I know we have extras, 'cause, yeah,
then
every
one's
once
sitting
in a
there.
while.
I know, I know.
What's that?
I said, this is gonna be more fun than my
Oh, yeah, I know. Laugh a minute.
that stuff.
You should hear my wife, they were talking, I could hear it from people who had every question was calling that night. She was telling them, I could hear it. I'm glad he's here. What everybody did. I told him, mine's working, man. I wanted him here.
Another truck.
He enjoyed it. Everybody did. Did you see mine? Are you streaming now?
Yeah, you and I. We're the only ones working.
Oh, no, we don't get paid for working.
From New York City. From Barberton City, the Magic City. Yeah.
The other gentleman,
See, that's why
and
the,
then our
regular
regular
man,
man.
that's what they call it. You know,
Jeremy's here.
Keith is working on a software issue. There he is.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Who is that?
Can you hear me, Jenny? Yeah, we can hear you.
How are we gonna get rid of that echo?
Who was that?
Denny Weaver, I think.
Oh, okay. All right.
We can't have that.
I'm working on it. There's the other camera.
You need this with you tonight or not?
I'll take it out.
Okay.
Came naturally.
I thought somebody might leave us $1 million in here.
Are we ready or you still gotta get that?
Maybe this is on my old one over there.
Go ahead with it, and I have to figure out where it's coming from, and I'll turn it down.
Okay. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Welcome back, everybody. It's good to be home, huh? All right. Okay, this is Monday, June 7th, 2021. This is Barberton City Council, and tonight is a committee of the whole meeting, but before we go into that, we are going into our committee meetings. First off, we're going to start out with streets, sidewalks, and lighting with Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Welcome back, everybody. It's nice to see everybody in the same room. I'd like to bring to order street, sidewalk, and lighting. It's June 7th, 2021. It is 6:01 p.m. and we are in council chambers. All members of the committee are present. All council members are present, and guests noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion, we have 2 requests for legislation today. Before I go over these 2 requests, I just want to preface that these 2 requests are for the same vehicle. The first request for legislation is a letter from Greg Tracy, the Service Director, requesting legislation to enter into contract with Henderson Products Incorporated, or Henderson, in the amount of $80,435 for the purchase, manufacturing, and installation of a body package. This is a truck build that will be added to the existing fleet in the street department, and Mr. Tracy is requesting emergency wording. Like I mentioned, this request for legislation is for a single truck, which will be followed up by the next request for legislation. This truck will be used for hauling trailers, equipment, asphalt, and other aggregates. It will be used as a new snow and ice control truck as well. We currently have 12 5-ton dump trucks on our force, and out of those, 10 have full snow and salt capabilities. So this is going to be added to that fleet. With that, do I have any questions? Mr. Tracy, if you can hear me, can you elaborate on this request for legislation? Lori, is he on the line?
Yeah, he's unmuted, he can speak.
Mr. Tracy, if you can hear me. Yes, sir. I was seeing if you had anything to provide for the first request, the legislation request on the agenda. Well, I wrote Mr. Tracy, I'll just go. I wrote him this morning and asked him about some more info on it, and basically what I've said is what he wrote. So basically this is also going to help the lifespan of our current trucks too as well. I left that out. I'm going to ask one more time if Mr. Tracy has any additional information he wants to provide to the committee for this piece of legislation.
The message from him says he can't hear anything you're saying. It shows you as muting, because it's up in our little
I
box.
don't have them. Oh, I see the message. He can't hear it.
Laura, whatever you did, I could hear for a second, and then
Hello, hello, hello.
Can you hear
I
me?
mean, that's it, okay.
Can you hear this?
It's like we're in the stadium.
You're not saying it. All right. Oh, really?
Should we turn off these mics? Do you think that would help? He's asking. Do you need to have your mic on if you're asking something? What, this one?
No, I mean here. I just turned it off. You should turn them off.
Yeah, mine's on.
I turned mine off just to see if that helps.
I'm afraid it'll come through those speakers if I do that.
Well, it can be as bad.
You still gotta, can you tape him, text him?
I can hear you now.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Just to confirm, Mr. Tracy, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so we were just discussing the first request for legislation and with Henderson Products for the amount of $80,435. Do you have anything else you would like to provide information-wise?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure if you went over the email that I sent over, because I couldn't hear anything, but have you gone into any detail on anything yet?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. No?
This is a delay, that's why.
It's just the first request.
How's this? It's like a half a second off.
I have a suggestion. Yes. How about we ask the department heads whose committees they are in charge of to come to the room during that committee meeting and then leave. That makes sense, and I will go do that.
That's a good idea. They're all here,
Yeah, I assumed they were, and that just,
and that's why that's exactly what they thought too.
yes.
They would come up if they were needed.
But if they'll be coming for
That's
just
why I said
their,
there's only 18 of us. I don't know what the limit is. What's the limit?
I don't think there is a limit.
What's that?
According to,
In the size room, in the size room, is there a limit of how many you can have?
I don't think so. Right, well, they're letting them in the stadiums. There's, he's downstairs, I believe.
oh, he's here? Oh.
Most of them are.
So there isn't a limit of seating groups? We don't, okay. Nothing, just have to come up.
It's up to individual stores
I've
or
been sitting here
whatever.
by the jam bottoms and my slippers on for a year, so I have good clothes on today. My shoes are too tight.
You're just angry.
Come in, sir.
There you go. Come on.
He doesn't want to breathe.
Mr. President, should we wait until clerk gets back?
Definitely.
He's here.
Thank you, Lori.
Lori, are you able to unmute? I can't hear.
Now who can't hear?
All right, Mr. Tracy, thank you for coming in. I'm just, for the sake of sanity here, I'm going to repeat this request for legislation. The first request for legislation is a letter from Greg Tracy requesting legislation to enter into contract with Henderson Products Incorporated. This is also known as Henderson, in the amount of $80,435 for the purchase, manufacturing, and installation of a body package. Truck build will be added to the existing fleet of the street department, and Mr. Tracy is requesting emergency wording for this. This is for one truck. This truck will be used for hauling trailers, equipment, asphalt, and other aggregates. It will be also used as a snow and ice control truck. We currently have 12 5-ton dumps, and of which 10 are full snow plowing and salting trucks, and this will add to the fleet. Mr. Tracy, the original question was just, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think probably most importantly, what we've done over the last 6-7 years is from like 2000 to 2011, there weren't a whole lot of trucks that were bought. So you had a big gap from 2012 to 2001 where there weren't any purchases made. So it puts us it started to put us in a predicament where the fleet was getting too old. So what we're trying to do is just keep the fleet up to date by purchasing trucks every couple of years. Also, there'll be a request in the utilities committee for a truck as well. And we're starting to move trucks from utilities down into the street department because they tend to have a little bit longer life in the utilities department because they're not out plowing streets and using salt. They rotate their trucks on jobs a little more just because they're able to. They're not always using all 4 of their trucks at one time. When our trucks go out, it's all of them in the street department. So we're able to shift some of these trucks around to keep our fleet up to date. If you look back, like our current trucks right now, our top 5 trucks are about a little over, what I say, about 5.5 years old. The addition of this truck will drop that to about 4 years old. But then after that, the next 5 trucks down, next 5 to 7 trucks, averages like 24 years old. So there's a big jump in age, and 24-year-old trucks doesn't lend to a lot of productivity. It's a lot of downtime, a lot of issues. So that's the reason. And also, this is we're looking at a lease purchase for these trucks. For this truck in particular.
The money being used for this, was this budgeted in the, this was budgeted in the?
This is not budgeted in 2021 because the lease purchase is deferred until 2022, so it will be budgeted for 2022.
Okay. Committee members, is there any questions? Mrs. Angela?
Mr. Tracy, how long will it take to get this truck?
Oh, so $2 million question. Right now, vehicles, all sizes and types are hard to get. We're easily looking at next year. So by the time it's purchased, sent to the bodybuilder and build out and sent back, it'll probably be next year.
Chair.
Uh,
I have a
thank-
question, Mr. Tracy. Do we generally, do this where we don't put it in the budget for the year that we're passing the legislation? Is that something we generally do?
This is my first time being involved with these purchases at this level, but this is how, the way I understand it, it may be better for Jeremy.
I was gonna
This is how
defer
I
to
think
Jeremy,
it
but I wanted to.
Yeah, just for the main fact, like Greg was saying, there's legislation with Finance Committee entering into a lease purchase agreement. That first payment is not until 2022. We have no money coming out of the budget this year whatsoever, so there's no need to budget for 2021 when there's no lease payment due in 2021.
I guess for me, it's just concerning because what happens if there are different council members here and they don't pass the budget, they don't like what's in the budget? We're assuming that a 2022 budget is going to pass, and that is.
That's with any debt service though, that we issue. I mean, and when push comes to shove, debt service is the first thing to get paid by the city, so it's top priority, so.
Is there any other questions from the body? Mr. Chairman?
Which kind of make and model is this truck gonna be?
This is a Kenworth.
Thank you.
It's a T370.
Man, thank you.
We have 4 other trucks that are just like it, so it keeps our inventory for parts and everything consistent.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other questions, department heads, council, committee? Seeing none, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation? Motion made by Mrs. Fry and seconded by Mrs. Angeloff. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. The second piece of legislation today is a letter requesting legislation to enter into contract with His Song Kenworth of Richfield, Kenworth, in the amount of $87,723 for the purchase of a new 2022 Kenworth T370 truck cab and chassis. The truck build will be added to the existing fleet of the street department, and Mr. Tracy is wanting emergency wording. This is the same truck. This is just for the services to put it together. Is that right, Mr. Tracy? The labor services?
Kenworth is for the actual truck, the one for Henderson is for the bike package.
I got it.
Snowplow, the auger, the spinner, the ride package on it.
Okay. And assuming the last answer to the budget question is the same for this 87,000 to be called for or budgeted in the 2022?
Yeah, so what you're gonna see is when the finance committee comes up, you'll see a lease package for both the streets truck and the utility truck for one full lease payment for both trucks. And this is for Kenworth and Henderson portion of the truck.
Okay.
One is one and two.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what.
Wait a minute, is he two?
So, yeah, these two requests for legislation are just one vehicle. Is there any questions from committee regarding this piece of legislation? From the body? Seeing none, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation? Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff and seconded by Mrs. Fry. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Miscellaneous discussion. I did reach out to Mr. Tracy today and inquired about the street program and an update for the street program. He mentioned that the next week, the pre-construction meetings start. And once these meetings start, we will know more about the scheduling, the restrictions, and the timeliness and that it's going to take to inform the residents. I also asked them what our residents should expect if their road or businesses, or if their road is affected and is going to be in construction. And the city or the contractor will reach out and let the residents or businesses know what to expect and how long. And we'll know more about that hopefully by the next street committee, but the pre-construction meeting is next week. Another thing is I want to thank Mr. Tracy. I seen the asphalt machine and a crew out on Grandview today. I know it takes a lot of manpower to get that out and do that, but the intersections over there were really bad. And it seems to, hopefully I'd see more of that, that machine out, but I know it takes a lot of manpower to get that going. So fingers crossed we don't have water main breaks when the heat comes and we can get a lot more of that going. Is there any miscellaneous discussion from the committee? Miscellaneous discussion from the body? All right. Seeing no questions, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Mrs. Fry and seconded by Angeloff. Street, sidewalk, and lighting is adjourned at 6:18 p.m.
Okay, before we go, excuse me, before we go into the next committee meeting, I think if everybody turn their volume down, off on their iPads, that might eliminate some of that feedback, echoing. It's on the top left. Okay, next committee is City Utilities with Mrs. Colburn.
Monday, June 7th, 2021. All members are present and all others as noted. We have a request for legislation from Mr. Tracy, Director of Public Services, requesting emergency legislation allowing the mayor to amend the natural gas supply agreement with Constellation Energy Services due to Constellation submitting the lowest rate formulation via a request for proposal. I'm going to let Mr. Tracy tell us more.
So the current gas aggregation program for residents and small businesses goes through September, I think October 2021. So we're looking to start, we have to go out now, we went out for bid for the new aggregation program to pick up on that to avoid any lapse in the aggregation program. That open bid came back with a number of bids. They invited all eligible bidders, and turned out that the bid itself was real close either at or below the current pricing. And typically the market for natural gas, a 2-year term is where you get the best pricing. But right now, because of the state of the wholesale gas market, the best pricing is actually 3 to 4 years out. So our consultant is recommending we do a 4-year natural gas aggregation program that would take us out to 2025 and keep our rates at or below where they're at now, which anything below 3,000 cubic feet is the lowest that the city has ever gotten over the last 20 years of deregulation. So this is gonna keep our prices right where they're at for the next 4 years.
Thank you. Is there any other questions about this legislation? Do I have a motion to call for it?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mrs. DeBevick. Do I have a second? From Carol Fry. All in favor?
Aye.
Our next request is a letter from Craig Tracy requesting legislation to enter into a contract with Hisson Kenworth of Richfield in the amount of $87,723 for the purchase of a T370 truck cab and chassis that is replacing a dump truck in Utilities Department. The replaced truck will be sent to the Street Department for continued use. Emergency wording is requested so that we can get the order turned in a timely fashion and get this truck by next year. Is there any questions about this one? It's much the same as streets.
Just gonna say, I'm gonna assume that this was also not in the 2021 budget, but.
Same thing, it's all included in the lease for next year. The police proposal.
Any questions? Do I have a motion to call for this? Mrs. Fry? Do I have a second?
I will second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have a letter from Denny Weaver, Utilities Director, requesting an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with North Bay Construction Incorporated for the wastewater treatment plant improvement, WWTP, Phase 3B and 3C, in the amount of $5,608,988. And we're requesting emergency wording. This was, Mr. Weaver, did you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. This, with the 4 bids received, the high bid was $6,750,000. So we had one bid that was pretty competitive with North Bay Construction. We've used them in the past, done a nice job for us, so I was glad to see them bid this again. Pleased with the bid. We've had it reviewed. They meet all specs. And so we have a recommendation to award the bid as the lowest and best.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions about this? Do I have a motion to call for it? Mrs. Fry? Do I have a second? I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And next is a letter from Denny Weaver, Utilities Director, requesting an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with CT Consultants for bidding and construction administration services for the wastewater treatment plant, WWTP, Phase 3B and 3C project. The cost is not to exceed $361,000, and we're requesting emergency wording.
I have a question about
Yes,
this
ma'am.
piece of legislation. We already have the bids. This is for bidding and construction administration services. So did we not pass a contract to allow them to bid? Or did we not?
We did not. This slipped through the cracks. This is a contract that I thought we already had. We did the design services, and typically on a complex project, we passed the CA services along with that. That design services were in 2016. This came up just in the everything will roll into it, as well as construction. And CT is the one who guided us through that $1 million grant for this project. The remainder will be on a DEFA loan, which is a 0.66 interest loan. But you're correct. And that is, it hasn't been built yet. You know, and that process is not complete either. You know, with the bidding services, it's more than just taking the bids and reading the bids. There's, you know, once that is closed out, it's all the contracts, but you have to approve that first before we go through that contract process and complete the bidding services.
Okay, I just want to make one comment for the record. This is my concern about emergency wording and one reading for everything. Because something like this slipped through the cracks, and we hired somebody to do something without passing an ordinance to allow the finance director to pay CT consultants for services they already completed. So moving forward, I think we have to be very cognizant of that.
Any other? Anyone else? Mr. Javers?
Yes, I would like to thank Mrs. DeBevick for finding that out and mentioning that. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion to call for this? Mrs. Fry, do I have a second? I'll second it. All in favor? Aye.
No.
Okay, it passes. A letter from, our next one is a letter from Craig Tracy requesting legislation to enter into a contract with Henderson Products Incorporated in the amount of $87,018 for the purchase, manufacturing, and installation of a body package. This truck package is part of the truck build that is replacing the dump truck in the utilities department. The replaced truck will be sent to street departments and for continued use. This also has emergency wording for the same reason as the cab did, so that we can get it ordered to be in by next year. Are there any questions? Do I have a motion to call for it? Carol, Wild, do I have a second? I will second it. All in favor? Aye. Are there any nays?
No. There are none.
Okay, thank you. Next is a letter from Denny Reader, the Utilities Director, requesting legislation authorizing the Director of Finance to place a lien with Summit County Auditor for unpaid utility services. This will include accounts more than 60 days past due and will include billing through August 2021. Emergency wording is requested so that we can have this turned in time for their, for the assessment.
So when is this supposed to be turned in by?
They'll be turned in September. However, we have to do all the work of this, do the notifications, send out letters. There's a process to go through that, which would start, we want to be doing that in July, to have those letters out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Weaver, have we done this before, put liens on property?
Yes,
You usually
for
do,
years.
assessments to the property taxes, but.
Well, yeah, that's what an assessment is.
Oh, okay, it's a lien on the house, so if you would sell your house, you'd have a lien on that piece of property?
That's
Is that
correct.
right?
Yes, they would have to be paid then, yes.
And we've done that before?
Yeah.
In-
For years,
Okay.
yes,
I
and it
know
goes
on
back
property
actually
taxes we
decades.
have.
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah, we've
Okay,
done.
I knew on property taxes, we do that for grass cutting and everything.
Mhm.
I wasn't familiar with that, okay.
Yeah, this is the same process. If you don't pay it through your taxes, it does stay on your bill when you go to sell your
So,
house.
so if you don't sell your house for 20 years, then,
Well, it would be, they'll put this on the tax bill. And so if it's less than $1,000, they'll take it out in 1 year. I believe that's correct, Jeremy. If it's more than 1,000, we have them take it out in over 2 years.
Correct.
So it'll show up on their tax bill. It's not just like a mechanic
Mr. Greer?
Questions for Mr. Weaver. Who, coming out of the pandemic, how's that gonna affect us calculating unpaid bills? There's a lot of people with unpaid bills
We're
right
close to
now.
$500,000 in delinquent utility bills right now. So it will help us, it's gonna knock them down. We're not going to the degree that we would in the past. Normally, we would go down to $100. And so this would be just the amounts over 500. And so anything under that would not be added. We continue to work to get those paid. So it could help some people that actually are turned off too, that this could give them an opportunity to pay that, some of the balance and get some arrangements made, get the water back on in some cases. So we've been working with, as you know, with people all through this pandemic. And as long as they paid 1 month, we would keep them on, pay the current bill. Even if they was $500 behind. Then we would encourage people to pay extra. Some did, some didn't. So this has been going on for some time, and it's really driven up the, what we are behind our delinquencies. So it's, this is an attempt to, collect some of those, not all of it, because we don't put it all into taxes, and continue to work with them, just ratchet it up a little bit.
Do we have any specific programs for residents that are having trouble paying these bills?
There's been a lot. They are not City of Barberton run programs, but there was Summit Cares. There was also programs through the state of Ohio. And then we also give them lists of the different charities that work in the area, Backham and St. Vincent de Paul. There's others as well. There's a lot of agencies that have helped them. And Summit Cares was a great one because it was actually 3 times the poverty rate when it first came out. So many people qualified on that, but were well above the poverty rate.
I just got one more question. I believe last year when we passed something like this, we were really only targeting landlords with a lot of back. This is across the board. This is
This is
more
yeah,
for
yeah.
residents, homeowners and residents.
Right. And, but we're keeping it high, so it won't hit, it's not gonna hit the majority. It's the ones that are, that are way behind. And, so,
What's an average water bill?
and, the minimum bill is over $50. The exact number escapes me right now. It's right around, $56, $57.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's for 2,500 gallons. That also includes your trash and the stormwater utility and lighting utility.
So people with $1,000 would be something that was before pre-pandemic, is
Yes.
what you're getting at?
Well, not in every case, but most of it, yes.
Okay.
And even with that Summit Cares, the people that applied for that, they paid for many of their bills pre-pandemic. And because of there just wasn't enough people applying for those funds.
All right. Well, awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Hedges?
Thank you, Chair. This would be more for Director Flaker. If this were to pass, when would we start realizing the actual gain of it?
Not until next year. Because since this is gonna be an assessment, we would send it off to Summit County in September, and then it will start showing up on their property tax bills the second half of 2022 is when.
Second half of 2022. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I would add, when we do this, when we send out those notifications, we collect quite a bit. Just the fact that when the notifications go out, we'll see a significant amount come in. And every time we've done it in the past, we've seen quite a bit of revenue.
Chair, if I may ask one more. The notices that go out to the residents, do we have the ability to also list resources, community outreach resources too, on that same piece of paper? Is that the possibility?
We normally don't, but we could add a second paper in there that lists those.
Just being a pandemic, it's I would kind of be, I just talked to a resident the other day that was worried about their water getting turned off, and they got a 10-day notice through the gas, and just didn't know where to go. So, when the city's breathing down your neck and
And,
post, we're in a
if they've
pandemic
got
still.
concern, please contact the office, because we can get them going on some of these programs.
Mhm.
And, then they wouldn't be turned in. If they, if they are in that process, working through it, we have notification from those agencies, they will not be included.
Awesome. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Anything else? Do I have a motion to call for this? Mrs. Fry?
I will second it.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Do we have any miscellaneous discussion for utilities? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Fry?
And I will second it.
Six thirty-eight.
Thank you. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services meeting June 7th, 2021. Time is 6:38. And we're meeting in chambers. Members present noted. Council members also noted, and guests. We have no new request for legislation. And open this up for miscellaneous discussion for the committee. Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if we had an update on pandemic numbers for overdoses, anything like that. I remember I'd asked halfway through the pandemic, just because I heard that numbers were a little higher on domestic violence and drug use. So,
That's a good question. I will reach out to Mr. Mayor and have him send us some emails.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Fry?
They had an article in the paper about that about a month ago, and they stayed basically the same, maybe even a little higher, overdoses and deaths during the pandemic.
just across the board.
Do you know which newspaper that was? The Beacon Journal? Thank you.
Chair,
Mr. Bevick?
If I might add, I just listened to a speaker, a dentist in Mahoning County, had a webinar, and I believe they're predicting that, based on Google search for one, that depression is, and mental health issues are going to be on the severe uptick as a result of the pandemic. And there was also information, and I would have to go back and look at my notes, I was just taking some notes, that, overdoses are slated to be the same as they were during our worst year. So, as a result of
Mhm.
as a result of meetings being canceled and users not having the ability to meet virtually. So, that's just, some insight that I have.
Is Mr. Marber on, Chief? Is he on to answer those questions? Oh, right here, Mr. Miller.
You could ask me.
Yes, how you doing? Hi. I'm sorry.
Yes, it's all up.
Yeah.
Overdoses are up, suicides are up, domestic violence up, all throughout our jurisdiction.
Thank you.
OPIs are way through the roof.
So all above. Thank you. All right, any more questions? Discussions, anything? All right, seeing none. Motion to adjourn, please. Mr. Griffin?
I will second that.
Oops, and second by Mr. Heidick. And we are adjourned at 6:41. And with that, sir, will pass.
Thank you. Next up is Planning, Annexations, and Codes with Mrs. Angeloff.
snacks today. No lifesavers, no
Thank you,
Reese's
Mr.
sticks, no
President.
Reese's cups.
I'd like to call to order the Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee meeting today, Monday, June seventh, at 6:42 PM. All members are present, along with council members and guests as noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion. First, we have a piece of legislation request from Mr. Trevor Hunt, Planning Director, to call for an ordinance to rezone partial 01.166060 and 11.26 acre at the southwest corner of Eastern Road and Fairland Road from C, that should be C2, Community Center Commercial to RS50, Single Family Detached. The Planning Commission met on May 19th and voted to recommend this zoning request. We will be having a public hearing tonight, this evening at the City Council. Certified letters were mailed, and the applicant's property was posted as per Barberton Development Code. Since this is a rezoning, this will go for 3 readings. And does anybody have any questions? This was way back, when Forest City had bought that development, was going to develop, and what was planned on this piece of property, they were going to put like a little grocery store, some convenience stores and whatnot, and have like apartments or condos up above that. And that never went through with Forest City, and so now Mr. Jim Little, who has bought that property, wants to put like 31 homes there. And at the planning commission meeting, he had talked that the building, it's going crazy, that he would not have any problem selling the houses. These are a little bit bigger houses, and the costs can vary anywhere between $230,000 and $300,000. So they're on larger lots and they're a little bit bigger. And we will have a public hearing at the board of, tonight we're going to have it here. So if there's any questions, you can ask Mr. Hunt in regards to this piece of property. It's 11 acres. Yes.
I have a couple of questions just that I received from, residents. Do you want me to wait until the public hearing to ask those?
You can, because Mr. Little will be here.
Okay, thank you.
I had a couple too, but I didn't get those answers. Any questions from the body? No? Okay. Like I said, this will go 3 readings. Do I have a motion to call for this? Mr. Greer first,
I'll second.
Mrs. Culver second. All in favor?
All right.
Okay. Motion carried. The second one is a request from Mr. Hunt, the planning director, to call for an ordinance to rezone parcels 01.06960, 01.06961, 01.0693, I'm sorry, 01.06963, 01.06962. It's a 4.33 acres at 635 Norton Avenue from C2 Community Center Commercial to I2, which is medium industrial. And this again, we will have a public hearing on that tonight. The planning commission voted to recommend the rezoning of that piece of property at their meeting on May 19th. And this too will go for 3 readings. Any questions from the committee?
I have none.
Chair.
Yes.
I mean, I get, this is public meeting tonight. Do we have an idea of what's going in there?
No.
Type of business or why we're doing it?
It's, well, because it's a community center commercial, and
Yeah.
so, requested medium industry. Light industry gives you just a small area, so if you go out to a medium industry, this is what the planning commission has educated me on. You open it up to
So it's for marketing for the
Yes.
most part.
Mhm. Yeah. Yes, Mr. D.
No, is this C2 or C3 right now?
C3?
C3.
Yeah,
Exactly.
C3, I'm sorry.
Both of them.
C3 now.
Now,
Oh, was
is
the
there-
other one C3
Yeah.
too? I didn't get that number on there, yeah.
Now, is there a price on that, parcel now? We decided on a price for that?
No, no.
Now,
It's
how
just
do-
getting it rezoned. There's no price until somebody looks at that and been rezoned medium industry, and that's what they have in mind. So then that's when, you know, you'll go out to bid for that piece of property, or you sell it, or whatnot. But this is the first thing, just changing that zoning.
Here's a question for you, since you're on planning. So we're gonna sell a property, but we don't know how much property.
No, I didn't say,
No, we don't-
nothing
no.
about selling it, no,
Just
we're just
re-
rezoning it, this is just rezoning it.
Okay.
From, community center commercial, C3, to I2 medium industrial.
How do we decide what the price will be?
We don't own it.
No, we don't, yeah, we're not,
We're not gonna do nothing with it for the
no,
city?
it's not selling it. This,
Okay,
this
just
what we're
rezoning?
talking about right now is strictly rezoning, nothing more.
And who owns the property right now?
Um, This might be, this was.
Councilwoman Angela?
Yes, go
If I
ahead.
heard correctly, the question was who owns the property right
Right.
now? It's the city.
City owns it now, it used to be,
Who owns the property?
yeah,
Now, how do we decide what the price will be for the city to sell that property?
I don't have the pricing, I'm just looking at rezoning, that's what we're looking at right now.
Mr. Trevor?
Mr. Trevor, did you hear that question?
The last question I heard was about ownership.
No, Mr. Jaber wants to know what the cost would be when this is rezoned. How would you sell it, how much would you sell it for?
We're,
And
I guess we're
explained-
listening to the best offer. I don't know if we have a set price in mind, so.
So basically, we're just looking at the rezoning at this point. Mrs. Miller?
Yeah, this stands apart, although it's related to the RFP that we released for the property. It's a separate piece of legislation and something that, obviously is a councilmatic issue rather than, anything other than that, so.
I'm sorry, I have two questions. First of all, I was gonna speak to Mr. Jaber's question about a sales price, but now I have a second question. Bert, can you remind us about the RFP for that property?
Hold on.
No.
You can't hear us.
So they must have had somebody look at it.
Yeah, there was an RFP that was issued back in May for this property. June 18th is the date that we're requesting all responses by that close of business that day. So yes, it was an RFP, not an RFQ.
Okay, and I'm
And what
sorry,
is-
I confused, I confused the situation worse, when we were calling for it, I thought we were still over on, Eastern Road, and we were.
No.
So we're over on Norton Avenue, can you remind us what parcel we're talking about on Norton Avenue?
It's the former Shamrock property,
Okay, so,
former Shamrock Hotel.
okay,
It's
so,
currently vacant, other than a concrete pad.
right, okay, so I'm just going to, typically when we sell a property, we would appraise the value of that property.
Thank you.
And any sale of city property has to go.
Any other questions from anybody from the body? Mr. Heidi?
Thank you, Chair. With the C3 Shamrock property being nestled in between the other C3s, have those owners been approached at rezoning their own to make it one contiguous unit of I2, or is this gonna be something that just sits in
No,
the middle?
Mr. Hunt had already talked to that Winthrop, because he actually is, light industry. So he's already had conversation with him about having that rezoned.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we've actually had a conversation with both of the owners, both Coles and Winthrop. Wintro wants to come back and talk to us about rezoning their property. And then Coles is gonna think about it some more, so, there might be some other rezoning coming down the pike as well.
Any other questions? This will go 3 readings and we'll have a public hearing. Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Reader first,
I'll second.
Mrs. Copeland second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Passed. The next request I have is from Mayor Judd for legislation designating the Barberton Community Improvement Corporation as an agent for the city of Barberton and asking for, emergency wording. This is the next step in establishing the Barberton CIC and calling for emergency, wording so that they can proceed with setting up this board. Mayor, are you on?
No.
No, he's not.
Just so we can.
I know, so we
move
can.
forward.
Is Mayor here?
I don't know if he's downstairs, I'll go look.
Oh, you don't have to do that. We'll just go through this. Now, the CIC was approved in ordinance number 91/2020. And like I said, this is the next step. Does anybody have any questions from the committee?
Chair.
Yes. Mr. Reader.
Just, could you explain what an agent would be in the sense of the CIC? What it would give the CIC?
I would have no idea what an agent is. Did you get the, attachment?
Yeah, I was just, in general business sense, it's so that they can act on behalf of the city.
Mr. Tracy, do you
Um,
have?
Well, it's kind of like when we did the FEMA grant stuff, we had to assign agents
Mhm.
to the program.
Okay.
We have our consultant, Gen 6, with Insight Advisors Group on the line, to present the next topic, but I believe she can answer this in a bit more detail. Jen, are you there?
I am, I'm here. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Good evening, Councilwoman Angela, Council and guests. My name is Jennifer Six. I am not speaking to this legislation tonight. However, I was treasurer for a municipal community improvement corporation for 12 years in Summit County. And you are correct, Councilman, that the city can designate the CIC to act as agent for the city for purposes of property acquisition and disposition, especially as it relates to negotiating the sale of property outside of the public realm in order to compete for the best price, so you don't have to competitively bid when the city wants to sell property. Or in this case, or not this case, but in some cases, there might be property that we find out about that's going up for auction or that's going under private listing that transaction needs to happen quickly. The CIC can act as agent for the city and typically act a little bit quicker and go to auction and bid on that property in a more confidential manner than having it before a public buying.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Jennifer.
Of course.
Any other questions? Mr. Heidi?
Thank you, Chair. If this passes, is the application for the board already set? Once it's completed? That would be my first question. I know the mayor would have, if he was here, would be that. But my other question would be, in 2 weeks for the next planning committee meeting, that will have surpassed the 1/4 mark. So if there would be any updates on the status of it, I know the incorporation was stamped by the Secretary of State on March 10th. So, July 10th, or, sorry, we'd put it right in the realm there. But I'd be more concerned with if there's an application process or anything online to be a member of the board once things get put in motion. And I know the mayor would be the one to ask that there.
Asking for the emergency wording that, he would, proceed with, setting up that board, so I'm sure he would have applications. I can't speak for the mayor,
Councilwoman, I know that the mayor is not able to attend this evening. However, I think that, he is in the process of setting up that board as we speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just be curious if there would be an online portal to apply, or how the whole process is
Right.
going to run about.
I don't even know that. I don't even know, first we need to pass this,
Right.
and then we can proceed with the next step. So that would be the next step, but we'll find out and let you know.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay? Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Mrs. DeVette.
So, from what I understood from Jennifer Six, that this acting as an agent would give the board the ability to take any acquisitions out of the public eye. As the legislative body, we should be concerned about that.
I think she
because
said it didn't have to go to bid, not, did she say out of the public eye?
I thought she said it makes it less public.
In negotiate sale of property, it does not necessarily have to go to bid.
It's more, Councilwoman, it's more about competitive bid. What it does is it expedites the sale of property or the disposal of property. What I said is takes it out of the council's purview, and out of council's realm of having to go to approval. It depends on how you want to act with the CIC. There will certainly be a council member on CIC. The mayor is able to appoint the board. However, there's a mix of types of people that you want on the CIC, and of course, council or a representative from council would absolutely be a part of that board. The essence typically for CIC can also act as a land bank. So if we have property that can come online and the city wants to acquire it, the city can direct the CIC to acquire property also, so that we can have it in a land bank for future development.
Did that answer your question, Mrs. DeVette?
It did. I've been concerned about the CIC all along, and I'm concerned about the statement that essentially it takes council out of the loop. So, it depends on how other council members feel about that. That's just my opinion.
Councilwoman Cook?
Yes.
The city council would have to approve the CIC to act as agent, for any particular project prior to any acquisition or disposition.
So this piece of legislation isn't a general piece to act as agent? Because that's what I feel like it says, but.
Councilwoman, I don't want to misspeak, I've not read the legislation, so I will defer that to either Mr. Hunt or the mayor.
If I may, in this case, wouldn't the council have to approve of transferring properties that the city owns to the CIC, even if we had acquired them? Wouldn't it still take council action to transfer them to then act as our agent?
I don't know. Mrs. Miller, did you answer that?
Well, I think that when a city is purchasing property, all of that is done in the public, right? We make an offer, we have to have council approval. When you're negotiating, it's all done in the public eye. And the purpose of a community improvement corporation is to not do that, right? So I understand in terms of, a concern of transparency, right? And I understand that it immediately for folks that they're kind of, that gives them pause. And I understand that. The flip side of that from a development standpoint is that you tend to get better pricing when that isn't happening, right? Just like, in a business world, you don't advertise that, businesses don't advertise, we really love to have that parcel of land because all of a sudden now everyone wants that parcel of land. So, that's the purpose of that. In terms of, what this specific ordinance says, while I understand I'm responsible for drafting all of the ordinances, if you remember, there were like 25 pieces of legislation this week, and, I did not, and we're only in a draft, so I can certainly look at it closer and answer your questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller.
So because we have so many unanswered questions sitting here as a body, is it realistic to have it as an emergency with one reading?
That, it doesn't say one reading, it says emergency
Oh,
wording.
okay, I apologize.
So it's just emergency wording, that gives us the opportunity to do more than one reading.
And I recall with the CIC, there was lots of questions, and it cost the city some extra money because of those questions. So I was hoping all of that would have been, taken care of at that time.
Well, I don't
But
think that this
definitely-
was a question.
Yeah.
But definitely we can go with emergency wording, and we can go ahead and go with, another reading or two readings, whatever's necessary. Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Chair, I do have a question. I'm sorry, last minute. Is the CIC subject to, like sunshine for dealings that they have made, not what they're making?
Sunshine law?
Meaning, Freedom of Information Act, would we have details of sales, past sales, receipts of land through the CIC?
Ours doesn't exist yet, so there won't be any past sales.
Like I understood the CIC when we initially passed it and was fine with that, but under the assumption that we did have some transparency.
We do, they'll report to us.
Yeah, but are they required to dispose information of if we ask? Not meaning current sales, nothing like that. Maybe a piece of land was sold, and the deal's already done. Are we privy to that information if we ask? Being a CIC, I'm just.
I don't know what the rules state.
I don't know what the rules state. There will be representative from council, on that board, as there is right now with the American Rescue Plan. So I would imagine that information would be pertinent to council. I'm not really quite sure. Mr. Tracy?
I don't know the answer to Councilman Greer's question. I don't think it's pertinent tonight that this,
Right.
it's not one reading. They can go longer, it's just the longer
Yeah.
it takes, the longer it takes to set the warrant. So
Right.
I think a lot of these questions could probably be answered.
Right. There's
So,
a lot of
yeah,
questions
I would
that we
just-
don't have answers to. Mr. Heidi?
Going with Councilor Greer there's statement, I do believe when we originally passed it, we had inserted the quarterly formal audit
Right.
reports.
Yes, we did.
Not just this is what we're doing, but an actual formal report that has
And
to
there will be a
massively audited. So I don't know if
So I
we can
don't-
just ask at any time, but
Right, and I don't understand that.
if I interpret what we passed correctly, then everything that we would be asking for should be in that report.
Yeah,
And if
every
it's not,
quarter.
then it would go against the ordinance in my thought process.
Right, right. It is quarterly, so it would not be any secrecy or anything of that sort, so. Any other questions? Do I have a motion to call through this?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Greer first, thank you.
I'll second.
Mrs. Coleman second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then next I have a letter from Justin Halter, who works in the planning department, requesting legislation to extend the boundary of the community reinvestment area to enable further economic growth through direct tax incentive tax exemptions for eligible businesses and property owners. And he is asking for, emergency wording, so to facilitate timeliness for eligible businesses and property owners. And, Mr. Hunt, has up on our screen, and we're gonna turn this over to you, Mr. Hunt. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Angela. Yeah, what I have before you on the screen is, both our existing CRAs and the proposed expansion of the CRA. And, I just want to show everything, how it relates to one another. So that's why I'm showing you this. I do have additional maps that go into greater detail on the specific parcels. But the proposal at hand today, and, in a few minutes, I'll turn this over to Jennifer Six, our consultant with Insight Advisors, she's worked on these in a number of communities, but I also have some previous exposure to this. It's one of the few tools in the state of Ohio that you can kind of put to use that we have at our disposal here in the city of Barberton. And to our advantage, this is a pre-1994 CRA, which allows a little bit more flexibility. But essentially what a CRA is a community reinvestment area. And it allows for the expansion of real property to be tax abated. Jen will get into the finer details of this when she presents, but what I wanted to present to you, we were approached by a business about 6 months ago. I guess it's public record now, I can make mention of this. Malco's the business. We've also had talks with several other businesses, but Malco's the specific business who came before the Board of Zoning Appeals last week, and they're trying to expand. So the reason for the timeliness is that we want to be able to get them through the construction process prior to construction season halting here. Meaning, you know, by the end of summer, we want to make sure they're in a good position to continue throughout the construction season and then into winter without having any holdups. But we've had this conversation with Jen for probably the last several months of how to try to incentivize a business staying in Barberton. And in this case, we feel we're successful. Malco has 3 locations, one in Barberton, one in Alliance, one in Akron. And I think we put together an attractive package to make them want to invest in Barberton and continue to grow here. And I think this will not only spur this particular development, but that for them to do additional developments in Barberton. So what you see on the map in front of you in the dark brown is existing CRA 2. I mentioned there's 5 existing community reinvestment areas in the city of Cleveland. I'm sorry, the city of Barberton. So the issue at hand is that we want to expand these community reinvestment areas, and we sought to do this by looking at strictly our economic base and where we have industrial zoning. So this expansion really mimics where we have industrial property in the city. You'll see Van Buren, the south side of Worcester Road. That's largely incorporated there in the light brown, and I have, like I said, additional maps that can go further into this. So, Jen, if you're able to speak to this a little bit further, we can take questions from council afterwards. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Good evening again, Councilman Angela, council and guests. It's a pleasure to see you again. As Trevor said, my name is Jennifer Six. I'm the president of a firm called Insight Advisory Group. We're an economic development consulting group in the area, and we've worked with the city of Barberton in a variety of capacities throughout the years as it relates to business retention, business attraction, mixed-use development, opportunity zones, and the redevelopment of certain sites throughout the city. And as you know, cities only have so many tools in their tool belts when it comes to incentives. And while incentives are actually meant to be icing on the cake, not the reason for relocation or expansion, they are definitely critical to a project. And from site selection and from a site selector and a broker's point of view, incentives are what drives the project over the finish line. And we know that from experience. And site selection is less about selection and it's really more about elimination, because brokers and site selectors are trying to eliminate sites as fast as they can so that they can get to their top 3 sites and then actually do visits, cut the deal, and then take their transaction fee and then move on to the next deal. So we really have to be competitive, especially now with the cost of construction and the wacky way that post-COVID world is, in order to remain relevant. And so that's why we're here this evening. Mr. Hunt mentioned Malco. However, we have other projects in the pipeline, including the redevelopment of the Babcock and Wilcox site, as well as 3 other companies that we're currently working with, brokers and Team Neo and our friends at Jobs Ohio. CRAs can also be used for land development and developer attraction. So CRAs can be used for tax abatement, meaning the company will avoid paying their real estate property taxes for a period of time at a certain percentage. And what that doesn't mean, though, is that current taxes are eliminated. So any taxes that are currently being generated on the land and on the improvement or the building stay in place. We're talking about new tax revenue based on new construction or expansion. So the trigger for tax abatement to actually work is you have to have enough of an improvement in order to generate higher taxes, and then we abate a portion of those taxes. And I think that's important to note because a lot of people, councils or school boards philosophically are opposed to abatement across the board, because it somehow harms the schools. What we're talking about here is only new revenue that will be generated because of the project. And we actually have a matrix that will determine kind of the percentage on some of these, as it relates to payroll, other investments. And this is all governed by the Ohio Revised Code. And we look at it as a very effective tool. This CRA in particular has not been amended since before 1994. And we feel that it is time to include some of these industrial properties that you'll see that go up Worcester, that go down 15th Street, in order to capture additional revenue. Right now, we don't have any mechanism in place to offer incentives to businesses that are expanding within the city. And what we can't have happen again is another B&W. That was out of the city's control. But what we can do now is react to it and be able to put incentives on that property now, because as we're also finding, when companies are looking to relocate, they're not willing to wait 12 months. They want to move in 3 months. And we're even finding that with some of the current companies that we're working with inside Barberton, they're ready to go. And as Mr. Tracy and Mr. Hunt can attest, I'm on the phone with them a lot saying, okay, where are we at now? What can we do this? And cities just don't move at the speed of business because they're not meant to. But what we can do is put these incentive tools in place now so that we're ready to go when we have the redeveloper coming in for the Shamrock property, when we have a buyer for Newell Street, the Belinovich property over by the middle school. We've got those opportunities already in place so that when Team Neo or Jobs Ohio says, hey, what do you got for us? We can say, here's the site that we think you should go at, and here's the incentives that are already in place and ready to go. So that's what this legislation does tonight. It expands CRA number 2 to allow for additional tax abatement, or tax abatement in general, because it's not currently there, other than what you see in the really dark area. So the dark area is the current CRA 2. The expanded area, you'll see, goes down 15th up Worcester and then back down. And we are looking for your approval with emergency this evening so that we can move forward, as we do have a pending project. And I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Babick has a question, Jennifer?
Thank you. I don't necessarily know if it's for Jennifer or if it's for Mr. Hunt. The color-coded map that you have up, can you explain to me what the different colors indicate? I know, but I guess I want to know, so what we have, where we have this right now is the dark brown, correct?
That's
The
correct.
dark brown and the purple. We were specifically talking about the dark brown, that's CRA number 2.
Okay, so you want to expand number 2?
Number 2 would be the expansion. The other ones will remain untouched. The CRA 1, which I'm clicking on now, this would remain untouched, as well as the other 3, CRA 3, 4, and 5. I'm highlighting those now for you as well.
Okay, so it's only area 2.2. Okay.
So it will not affect around Lake Anna?
It will not, no.
That's all I got.
Mr. Heidi?
Thank you, Chair. My first question is, and I know there were implications with the school being property taxes, has the Barberton School Board weighed in on this?
Mr. Councilman, they are not required to weigh in, although I will be having a conversation with the superintendent as it relates to working with us on the CRA.
Thank you, and I have one more question, and please, Ms. Six, please do not take any offense to this. Mr. Hunt, can I ask why the Barberton Community Foundation or the Barberton Community Development Corporation hasn't been on top of this?
Do I know why? I don't know why. No, I would say that maybe this, from my past experience in working in other places, I was aware of this tool. Obviously, our consultant Insight was aware of this tool, so it's something that we want to make use of. So I don't know the background between the Community Foundation nor the Development Corporation on exploring this.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee or the body?
Mr. Angeloff?
Yes, Mr. Gator?
Mr. Trevor Hunt and Mrs. Six, Jennifer, I want to say thank you. This is all new, and hopefully we can move forward with this. What you guys are doing is opening a new chapter in this book that it's been closed for so many years. I think this is a great way to start, and you have my support with this, and it'd be nice to get these industrial rezoned and move forward with this, and hopefully open up new businesses come to Barberton. So I want to personally thank you for doing your homework and moving forward with this. And hopefully other council members see that and they follow the path. So thank you again.
For so many years, we've landlocked. We do have land, we just have to produce that. We just have to change things. So, Mr. Hunt, thank you. Jennifer, thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Greer has a question?
Thank you, Chair. Just as a businessman myself, I am a big proponent of tax incentives and stuff like this, and it is huge. And I'm looking at the map. I'm actually pretty excited the area that this covers. A lot of it's in my ward too, so it's exciting. It'd be nice. And incentives go a long way with business, especially now.
Any other questions? Okay, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion to call for that.
Mr. Greer, second.
I'll second.
Elizabeth Hogan, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. I'm not gonna go through any of the miscellaneous discussions other than the CDBG annual action plan. I think that, Mr. Griffin will have that. I think we all got a new packet of that. So, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Councilwoman Angela?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Hunt.
Yes, it's Trevor here.
Oh, I'm
I don't
sorry.
know if you want to take the time tonight, I'd mentioned, sharing the vacant land disposition strategy with council. No actions required, it's more for discussion purposes, but,
Okay,
it's totally up to you, I know there's a lot of business here, so.
well, how long will it take? Because we did talk about the vacant land, and we had sent that map out to everybody. And I kind of requested that they would, any show us the land, you know, that would be available that we can help our constituents with. And how long would that take? I don't have a problem with this, Mr. President, Mr. Greer. Do you have a problem with this?
Depends on how long.
I think I can go through it in 15 minutes and then leave questions and, you know, again, it's for information only, so we can revisit at a subsequent, council meeting.
Okay.
But if it's a busy agenda too, I understand. You got a lot to go through, so.
It is a busy agenda. Can we put that on the next time?
That works for me. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you. So do I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Greer, second.
I'll second.
Mrs. Coburn, and we are adjourned at 7:21 PM. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Next up is Mrs. Fry with Finance and Personnel.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Personnel Committee meeting will come to order on June 7th, 2021. The time is 7:21 PM. And we are meeting in person. Some members are virtual. They're in the building, but they're on iPads meeting with us. All members of the committee are present, as well
You covered it mostly. Like you all know, last year when we were going out for the insurance renewal, it was a bad time. You had the 2 dam failures up in Michigan. You also had COVID hit, where insurance companies weren't willing to take too much risk. So we were able to get the dam covered, but it wasn't under our $10 million umbrella that we have. We were able to get a $1 million coverage on that. Weichert is working with a couple insurance companies on our renewal, and one of the companies, they've been picking up dams again. So they're trying really hard to get that back under our umbrella policy. So working through that, and like the letter states, as soon as I get a price back from Wickert, I will get it to council for us to get the insurance renewal done.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions about this? No, hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Devitt, do I have a second? I have a second. Seconded by Mrs. Angela, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Second piece of legislation is from a letter from Mayor Judge requesting a resolution recognizing and giving commendation to the Barberton businesses for their resiliency and determination while working through the challenges associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. Does anybody have any questions about this piece of legislation? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this? Make the motion. Motion made by Mrs. Angela.
I will second it.
Seconded by Mrs. Devitt. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. The third piece of legislation is a letter from Mr. Flaker requesting legislation for the creation of a new fund called Road Maintenance Fund. He wants to have emergency wording, included in this piece of legislation. This is a new revenue source for roads, and, it is from an agreement with Copart, which is a new company that will be locating in Barberton. And since it doesn't fit into our regular road program with the income tax money and what have you, we have to set up a separate fund. So, Mr. Flaker is requesting that we set up this fund. Any questions? Mr. Guerrero?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Flaker, can you elaborate on why this needed to be another fund? What was the?
It's because of the agreement that's in place between the city and Copart. I reached out to the auditors and asked them what would be the best practice for this, to see if I could use one of our special revenues funds that are already in place. And it's just because of the restriction on the fund, because the road maintenance, the money that's generated from this road maintenance fund can only be used on Norton Avenue and Barber Road, the stretches that are gonna be mostly impacted by this new business. So since that restriction is in place because of the agreement, is why I have to create a new fund for this.
Okay, and are we at liberty to explain that agreement?
That I'm not sure.
If we
Okay.
enter into the agreement, it's full record. I don't have it with me right now.
Is it just that they're gonna be using the road and tearing it up and they agreed to pay for it?
Basically, yeah. The amount of vehicles that are gonna be coming in off on Barber Road and Norton Avenue, it's just the
Okay.
wear and tear that's gonna be
Okay,
on those roads to help try to maintain those roads.
They've entered the parties to the agreement are the city of Barberton and the city of Norton as well as Copart.
Mrs. Angela? And I believe that they offered, Copart
Awesome.
offered that
Okay.
to help pay that road maintenance.
No, Mr. Hunt
Oh, Mr. I negotiated it.
brought that to him.
Ms. Fry.
Any other questions?
Since we're on the subject of Copart and the roads, Ms. Tracy, that road is very, very small for semis and tries to pull on, are we thinking about expanding that road or widening that road out, or?
Which road?
Norton Barber Road, are we thinking about any kind of expanding?
Norton Avenue is 11-foot lane, so it's adequate for trucks. I mean, you have Alcoa and Fall Wash there.
Yeah, there's,
Yeah, there's.
if you sit there sometimes, you'll see truckers trying to turn, and sometimes it gets, you know.
That's probably more due to their driveway,
Yeah,
like, being in there.
so nothing by expanding and nothing else. Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this? Legislation?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Levitt. And I will second. Seconded by Mrs. Angelo. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. The fourth piece of legislation is a letter from Jerome Blakely, Council Legislation, authorizing the finance director to execute and deliver a lease purchase agreement with Huntington Public Capital Corporation in the amount of $342,899. This is for, the two Kenwood cabin chassis, packages, and, then the Henderson tub stainless steel body snow and ice control packages, and the Henderson, snow and ice control packages. It's a total lease package. All of the trucks and what have you that we passed this evening are all included in the same lease agreement. And as Mr. Tracy had, informed us of earlier, these are going to have to be, manufactured and put together and have all the, other, packages put onto these trucks, and they won't be ready until 2022. Therefore, the money was not in the 2021 budget. It will be put in the 2022 budget. Does anyone have any questions, or do you have anything to add, Mr. Flaker?
I'll add on it a little bit. As the letter states, it's gonna be a 3-year lease, so we'll have payments in 22, 23, 24. Huntington was, once I factored in the fees and interest and everything, Huntington was the lowest bidder on this. Payments will be roughly just under $118,000 a year, split between the street fund and the utilities funds. So give a little bit of information, and just to kind of tap on to the other pieces of legislation. It's one of those things, it's all or nothing. Basically, if this legislation for the lease doesn't pass, then we won't look into getting the trucks. Basically, getting the trucks will be dependent on this lease passing through council.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to call for this lease package? I'll make a motion. Motion made by Mrs. Angela.
I have a second.
Seconded by Mrs. Rebecca. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we have another, piece of legislation titled ordinance, amending ordinance number
receive like 6 applicants.
Oh.
Usually.
Hey, sorry. Didn't we vote on this already?
I didn't know that. Okay, do I have?
Didn't we vote on that?
A motion to call for this?
This isn't ending.
This is not.
We might have. Oh, we did.
Okay.
Okay.
Wait.
All right, I'm on my copy. Thank you. All right, the next.
See?
piece of
We
legislation.
we didn't have to vote on this.
It is an ordinance titled Appropriations Fire Department appropriating $910 from the appropriated items fire prevention and education fund to the fire prevention and education fund operation and maintenance budget for the purchase of smoke detectors for Barberton residents and declaring an emergency. This was referred to finance from, safety, and the $910 is a foundation grant. For miscellaneous discussion, we have a piece of legislation that is upcoming. It is, the ordinance for, it is for ordinance number 47/2021, which we have had the first reading. We're going to have 3 readings on this. But, it was brought to my attention by Mrs. DeBevick that if this does not pass, we will not have a pay scale in place for the council president and the council at large positions. Therefore, I need to amend, ordinance number 47/2020 to include a clause that says, and Mrs. Miller can correct me if this isn't right, in the event that ordinance number 47/2021 does not pass, compensation for president of council will remain $15,500 for 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025. Compensation for council at large will remain $12,000 for 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025. If that's not correct,
No, you would just amend the ordinance. You would, in your committee, just like you would amend any ordinance.
after the fact, after it's been
No.
turned down?
No, you're going, so, the ordinance was proposed. Just
Right.
pretend this is any other kind of ordinance.
Okay.
And if you wanna change the ordinance, you have to offer an amendment to the ordinance before it's passed.
Okay, that's what I was
Right.
basically saying.
No, you're saying, you're kind of doing a contingent language. You can't
Okay.
do that.
Okay.
You can offer an amendment to the ordinance, like your committee could amend the ordinance to say those pay scales amending the ordinance that was proposed.
Basically, I think what she's saying is recanting Mr. Heidick's proposal.
Well, you're amending the pay scale that his
Is on.
requested legislation, so he requested legislation
Right.
and a draft was drafted. Your committee can move to amend that legislation.
All right, to include, it has to include some language if we're amending it.
Sure.
I think Director Miller is saying the only thing you can amend is you would have to change the amounts, the committee would have to change the amounts themselves. I don't think there can be a fallback clause or anything, is that
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
So what happens if this doesn't pass in the current form? You're saying that we have to decide before the legislation comes to vote?
Right, just, I guess I would just say, pretend this is not this ordinance, pretend it's any other ordinance. You can't have a contingent ordinance.
Okay.
You either have to, you have an ordinance as it's presented, and you either pass or don't pass that ordinance, or you take that ordinance and you amend it with other language and pass the ordinance as amended, right? You've done that before. I'm calling for ordinance 2021 as amended, and that's the ordinance that you would have.
So therefore, I need to know, which when we spoke, you said that you should know if you have the votes to have the current legislation pass.
Well, you're gonna have to talk to your committee.
Right. Well.
So I just want,
Because not everyone has weighed in on this to
Right.
begin with.
So mentioned that the three of us would abstain, but I can't speak for other council members. I just want to, make important note that moving forward after this piece of legislation, that we consider changing how we're doing it. So I don't think when we changed the charter for the primary to be held in May, we didn't take into account that setting pay comes after people ran in the after people were, were in the primary.
Right.
So I think, in my opinion, I don't know if it's a legal opinion, but in my opinion, the point of the legislation is so we are not setting our own salaries, but we already ran and won our primaries, so we set our own, and now it's a reduction, so I don't see a problem with it, and I'm not going to vote, I'm going to abstain. But, I guess I just think that our primary needs to be in September, which is why we never had this problem, and now that it's in May, we didn't take that into consideration.
Mr. Ivey.
Thank you, Chair. I will be following Councilor Levick's lead, and I will be abstaining from any vote regardless of the amendment, regardless if it goes in its current form, because it does affect the seat that I currently hold and am seeking re-election to.
I understand that, and that's fine, but when we come to the next step, I mean, that's not this,
They cannot vote.
Right.
They cannot vote on an amendment, they cannot vote on any part of that, and they should not be participating at all.
in the discussion. Okay. All right, then the rest of the committee, what do you have to say about? I pulled some legislation that was done in 1999 to adjust pays. And at that time, they set the new rates for the president of council and for council at large. At that time, which is 22 years ago, at that time, they set the pay for the president of council at $15,000. In 2006, it went to $16,000. In 2010, it went to $16,500. The members of the at-large and members of council went from $12,000 in 2002, $12,500 in 2006, and in 2010 it went to $13,000. I can't see going backwards 22 years. And that's just my opinion, and if you think that the money is too much for your particular seat, anybody has the ability to donate the money back to the city, or to donate it to Batham, or whatever. But, I just don't think that we should be rolling back salaries. Because if we do that, then the next time that elected officials' pay is in question, people are going to expect those elected officials to roll back as well. I don't know if you're allowed to talk.
May I speak on the ordinance itself and the reasoning behind it?
I think you should know. That's my opinion. Okay.
Withdrawn.
Mrs. Angela.
Well, I did have a question, since Mr. Heidi's the one that drafted this, ordinance up. I agree, I think that, we just now asked for the minimum wage to go up to $11 because we can't seem to find seasonal workers, and I'm sure other departments, other workers too. And to go backwards doesn't, just doesn't make a lot of sense, because it's not a lot of money. You're looking at $6,000 a year, to go back, and I don't get it. I don't understand why, what the reason was, and, is it personal? Is it a business? Is it political? I just don't understand. It's not like you're asking to go back 10 grand. You're going back 2,000. And 22 years ago, that's what they were being paid. And it's not about the money. It's never been about the money. With me, I'm gonna talk personally, I have a pension. It's never been about the money. I I just don't understand why, when we're asking for increases and you have, contractual, contracts and things of that sort, and new hires and everything, that you'd wanna go backwards 22 years. I'm gonna tell you the truth, I don't know how I'm gonna vote with this, cause it doesn't make any difference to me if we got paid $100 or if we got paid $10,000 or $12,000. To me, it doesn't make any difference, I did not get into this for that reason. I just don't understand why you would wanna go back 22 years, 20-some years. Why would you wanna go backwards on a pay scale? He's not allowed
On
to
advice
answer,
of
but maybe somebody
Director
else.
Miller, I withdraw any statements.
But
So
another.
that's mine. So if we can hear from the rest of council to get their ideas, to see what's going on, so Mrs. Fry knows how to present this.
Mr. Jaber.
I'll be abstaining from voting because, as you guys know, I've donated all my salaries back to the city, to the churches, and to the residents of Barberton. So I'll be abstaining from that vote.
Mr. Burke.
I'm running for office, I can't speak now.
Oh, boy.
Do we have enough votes, do we have a quorum?
I think we should.
No.
You don't.
This is
Mrs. Miller.
Mrs.
You
Miller.
can't abstain, you can abstain when you have a conflict. Councilwoman DeBevick has a conflict, Councilman Heidick has a conflict, and Councilman, Greer has a conflict. You don't have a conflict, Mr. Jaber.
So that leaves,
Do I have the right to say no or yes or abstain?
We gotta do the
Yeah,
public
vote.
hearing
So
first.
that's fine.
You abstain when you have a conflict. They have a conflict of interest. They can't vote on their own
They're both
day.
in the gallery.
So are you saying right now I can't say abstain?
You can't abstain.
So Trevor's coming up too then.
so there's one,
Yeah,
two,
you should
three,
be here.
4, 5 people, is that enough for us to even
But
vote, Mrs. Miller?
you don't have to vote today.
No, we don't.
No,
But
but wanna know,
we do
yes.
have to know what we're going to do.
You really don't. You're really, in this process, it's committee of the whole, correct? You're having a discussion, you're discussing an amendment to an ordinance. The purpose of committee of the whole is to discuss, right?
So it can be amended, and we have finance every week, I'm sorry, I'm not, sorry,
Yeah.
I am part of finance committee, so I've gotta just make a suggestion, not, if it's not this ordinance. We meet every week, so if we would amend an ordinance,
It's going, the last vote has to be on the 28th.
I know, but it's only June 7th. So we have how many finance committee meetings before then to amend it? 3.
On another note, though, in the event that anybody wants to make a career in the Oprah system, they are hurting themselves because down the line, if you are making less than $12,000 a year, those years do not count towards retirement health care. So, you know, a lot of us are out of the game, we don't care. But anybody that is still doing this and plans to do this for a number of years and might get a retirement of some sort, that's something to consider. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Chair. On advice from Director Miller, I can speak on some of the issues. Oh, I can't. I thought you just said I could.
I said you cannot,
Oh,
that's what I
I'm
felt.
My apologies, Chair.
Never
Please-
mind.
Please continue.
Okay, all right,
I'm against the reduction because you can't get, like Mr. Jaber said, you can give it all away.
exactly, that's your prerogative.
You can give it all away, but you can't get people to want to do something. You're just not gonna get people that wanna come in here and work for nothing. If they're able to give it away, that's their heart. That's not necessarily, and we have no guarantee that any reduction is gonna be passed on to those people that you would like it to be passed on to. That's up to the city to do that, and we don't have much control of that either.
I just don't know why you wanna
Mr.
go back.
Griffin.
Mrs. Fry, if Mr. Heidi can't talk about it, and he has to abstain, what? He can't propose it, can he?
I was just gonna ask this.
How can he,
Yeah.
how can he propose it? If
Yes.
he
He
can't
proposed
coordinate, I mean,
legislation about a salary for a seat that he's seeking.
yes.
You're reading my
You're
mind.
absolutely
Well,
right.
that's why I said it's a big deal.
Well, you better hope that he can propose it so that you can amend it.
Okay.
Director Plans.
Can he though?
If I may ask one question to you, Director, what happens if an amended version or this version fails on the 28th?
There would be no pay. The
That's
finance director
the
has no
reason
legal
we'll probably
authority to pay
cut it.
anyway.
For 4 years?
Correct.
And we would within a couple of days pass the 120-day threshold required by the charter.
Correct.
Thank you.
We can continue to talk about this in the coming weeks, but,
So,
I'll just let it.
so does it have to go 3 readings?
No.
Pardon? Does it have to go 3 readings?
What? It wouldn't have to go through reading.
No, because I think that's what was brought up before, that we would go next week. We could vote on it next week and do 2 readings and,
Mhm.
instead.
Yeah.
So that's why we kind of wanted a little bit of conversation today, but.
So,
Therefore,
I'm not, I can't
we
make
still
sense.
wouldn't have enough time, because we wouldn't have time to, unless we amended it. Okay, just think about that, and if anybody has any comments, please email me about, how you wanna go
Well, legally,
forward.
how are we bound? How are we bound that he proposed it, doesn't matter? I know,
I
I'm
think
sorry.
that look means that. In other miscellaneous business, I have a couple things that I would like to bring up, and one of them is overtime reports. And I had reached out to Renee, and are we gonna start getting those again?
I had the whole thing, and I emailed you and I asked you which sheet you wanted me to print and get those for you, to give me the page numbers that you specifically wanted, and I just never heard back from you.
I don't remember getting that, but anyway, I'll look at an old one that I have, and actually, all of us got them.
All right,
It
because
was something that,
the whole report is there, and I can print out the pages that you want, just show me which pages you.
okay, I'll
just
tell you,
email
I'll
it to us.
I'll email you
Okay.
later about that.
Yeah, we don't want them printed, we just want the email.
No, I want them printed, because mine, it doesn't print right on my printer.
You want yours
She
printed.
used to print mine for me. Renee
Okay.
did. Okay, then, a couple of these, as in closing for my report, I wanted to update everybody on the ARP, and I think that everyone did get a copy of the committee report from last week. We'll meet again this Wednesday. But I also got an email from Justin with another suggestion. And it is about the purchase, I have it here, it is about the purchase of an asphalt machine, which I will, bring up in the committee meeting when we meet. If nobody has any other, questions or comments, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion
Oh,
made
I
by Mrs.
just had one question for Jeremy, and then adjourn, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Mr. Flaker, we received, a request from Mrs. Miller for, her badly needed, computer technology as a result of COVID. And it says from the general, fund, I thought we had discussed that possibly being eligible for CARES Act money or CDBG budget. Do you?
Well, we don't have any, we do have a small portion of CARES Act money left. It's like $700, right now, I wanna say, the most recent council report. But the plan, I'm gonna be coming to council here shortly in the next couple months, because there's still one more PO that we need to close out, to get that money appropriated. Now, the CDBG CARES Act money, I don't know if that can be used for that. I'm not sure, what that program consists of and what it can be used for. So I don't know if the because I think we still have CDBG CARES Act money left, if that could be used or not for that.
Mr. Hunt, are you with us?
I am, yes.
Oh, is he back? I can't see you at all. Thank you. Can you help us with that? Is that something that's eligible for CDBG CARES Act money?
We can look at it a bit more. I don't wanna get anyone's hopes up. I know that CDBG has to directly benefit an LMI population. So being creative of how we do that, we need to figure out and make sure it's within the rules, but we can look at it.
So, Mrs. Miller, deferring, actually, most of your population is probably low to moderate income, would you?
Right, well, we could definitely, anyone who qualifies for the public defender, if we have that case and we have that ability to run that report, so.
So, Mr. Hunt, will we take a look at that before this piece of legislation comes to us next week?
Yeah, I can try to coordinate with, Justin.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
One more question for you. Speaking of seasonal, how we're trying to increase seasonal pay, is there a way we can look into the increase in pay for the crossing guards?
That's part of that
Part of that one?
legislation.
Okay.
Yes,
I
that's
think
part of
that'd
that
be
legislation.
nice to recommend.
Yeah, it's listed on
All
there.
right, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, definitely.
any more questions? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, I'll second it.
Okay, all right, Nina Angela motioned and Carla Rebevic seconded, and we are adjourned at 7:56.
Okay, 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Oh, 100%, but I'm. Listen, end of June is the last, any remote, since then, yeah, I know, that's good.
I think I'm following you.
Oh, good.
Nice to meet you. You too. Nice to meet you. I lost one contact.
We're gonna do yours.
What's the big problem?
Hi. Yeah, hi. Nice to finally meet you both. Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm not gonna be allowed back in here.
It feels like it. See, she comes in and starts busting up the place.
Nice to meet you. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I just set my hand down.
It was sitting on the door there. Love you.
Hello?
Oh, God, I said that, I told you on the phone, I didn't.
Where's Lori?
I have a hoodie in my
I'm even cold, I'm never cold. I'm just telling him, we're gonna go out over there, we're gonna do the resolution, and then he's gonna come up and talk. Because we gotta get. Right. Usually it's an ordinance, doing a resolution, agenda and everything. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's get going. Okay, we're going to go out of order here a little bit. We have a resolution for Mr. Yarsa, and the clerk's going to read it, and then we'll go from there. Go for it.
Resolution number 42, 2021, title, Commendation, Summer. A resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton to honor and give public recognition to John Yarsa and his therapy dog, Summer. Whereas, although Golden Retriever Summer passed 2 days shy of her 16th birthday on April 13th, 2021, her legacy will live on. And whereas, sweet days of summer brightened the lives of her human parents, John and Laura Yarsa, deceased 2020. And whereas Summer grew into a phenomenal therapy dog who visited people in nursing homes, hospice, Barberton Schools, Barberton branch of Summit DD, Barberton Library, entertained people at many community events, and even met with Senator LaRose to discuss stronger animal abuse laws. She appeared, performed, and contributed to many charity events, too many to list. And whereas Summer was the spokes dog for the local Lions Club, collecting thousands of used eyeglasses, which earned her recognition in a national magazine as one of the top dogs in the United States. Dick Goddard also honored Summer on stage in the Woolly Bear Parade for her amazing talents. And whereas Summer will be missed by John, everybody who was fortunate enough to have met her and many lives she touched. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Barberton, State of Ohio, Section 1, that the Council of the City of Barberton hereby honors and gives public recognition to John Yarsa and his therapy dog Summer for providing Barberton residents with comfort, laughter, affection, where she provided each of them a temporary escape from their daily struggles. Section 2, that this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after the earliest period allowed by law. Passed May 10th, 2021.
There you go. John, you want to come up here and we'll give you this resolution, then we'll all give you a handshake. You guys want to give him 5? I like that idea. Yeah. John, would you like to give us a couple words and tell us about the pet food drive, which I think is a fantastic idea?
Yeah, I sure will. On behalf of my late wife Laura and Summer, I would like to thank everyone. There are way too many to mention. We are humbled, and this honor is truly a community effort. I told Sean when he had brought this up that I would accept the commendation with the hopes that Summer would be an inspiration for others to possibly train their dog to become a therapy dog and in turn help the citizens of Barberton. Whenever we went on a visit, I always let Summer do the talking. So if I may, I would love to read a few lines from a poem a great Summer friend wrote about Summer. Long before my puppy pads paraded on this earth, I chose the humans that would be my parents after birth. They liked to think they had a say, but that was not the case. I made them fall in love with me. I used my special face. They had a long-time vision that matched my mission here. I simply had to train them. It took more than a year. And when they were proficient at grasping little tricks, I'd show them my approval with a smile, a wink, or licks. And soon I deemed them ready to start my true career of spreading love and comfort to the needy people here. I bade them to take me to places near and far so I could touch and heal the hearts of people hurt and scarred. And just like well-trained humans, they quietly obeyed while I brought canine therapy to the souls along the way. My humans answered questions because I cannot speak, while I continued visiting the old, infirm, and weak. I kissed the hands that touched me and leaned into each caress. I coaxed out smiles from little kids who loved how I was dressed. I met with several bigwigs so I could advocate against abuse to animals who suffer awful fates. My life was always busy, so much to see and do. There's always someone somewhere who needs a kiss or two. And we'd like some help spreading the word about a pet food collection event in Summers and Laura's name that we're going to be having on Saturday, June 19th, 1 to 3 at the Barberton Magic Stadium parking lot. I believe you all got handouts from when that's going to be. We appreciate any help you have to get that out to all your constituents and some make it a real nice event in their honor. Barberton today, Barberton tomorrow, Barberton forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, John and your entourage, you do not have to stay here.
Thank you. Thanks.
We're not with them.
What made you think we weren't going to stay?
Just making it convenient for you. Thanks, John.
public hearings.
Okay. Before we get into the committee of the whole meeting, Mr. Trevor Hunt, Planning Director, has requested a public hearing. I call this meeting ordered. This is a public hearing of the Barberton City Council. Today is Monday, June 7th, 2021. It is 8:09 p.m. It's all yours. Wait, I gotta do one more thing, excuse me. This is zoning map amendment, 4.33 acre site, 635 Norton Avenue, parcel 01.06960, 01.06961, and 01.06962, 01.06963. Before we start, I need the clerk to call the roll.
Mrs. Angela.
Here.
Mrs. Coburn.
Here.
Mrs. DeBevick.
Here.
Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Mr. Greer.
Present.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
Mr. Jaber.
Here.
Mr. Nichols.
Okay, Mr. Hunt, it's all yours.
Thank you, Council. As Council President Medges alluded to, I'm here tonight to present on the potential rezoning of the 4 parcels that he called to question. Parcel 01.06960, parcel 01.06961, parcel 01.06962, and parcel 01.06963. The city of Barberton owns all 4 parcels, which make up a .43 acre site, and it's most commonly referred to as the former Shamrock property. So I think all of you have before you a staff report, so I'm going to try to quickly go through it, but thoroughly address kind of all the high points of that report. So the rezoning request, which also came to our planning commission on May 17th, is proposed rezoning from community center commercial C3 to medium industrial I2. And the idea is that this site could be marketed for a more lucrative commercial use of some sort. So I'm just going to quickly, like I mentioned, go through the staff report. The zoning and land use table, this site's unique because it shares a property line with the city of Norton directly to the north. So there you have vacant industrial property zoned to I1. Their zoning classifications are a little bit different than the city of Barberton's. And to the south, directly to the south is Decker Park, which is actually zoned RT40, which is a residential land use. To the east is Dee's Diner, zoned C3, and to the west is Cold Storage, Francois Lounge, and Wintro's Construction. All 3 of those are zoned C3 currently. Just a description of the site. As I mentioned earlier, it's 4.33 acres, located on the northern section of Norton Avenue, situated directly across the street from Decker Park. The previous use was a motel, nightclub, and mobile home park, and the site was acquired by Barberton Community Development Corporation in 2013, and finally transferred to the city in 2018. Proposed use activities, nothing definitive yet, but as I mentioned, the city has issued a request for proposals to attract some light industrial development. We feel that this proposed rezoning coincides with the recently released RFP, and from conversations with other economic development professionals, we anticipate that the site will attract more attention as an industrial site as compared to a commercial site. And then the staff report goes on to list what uses are allowed by an I2 zoning classification. You can see I can read them all, but I put you to sleep. So, but that's identified the potential end users that could go there. And again, a little bit more lucrative than what's permitted by the C3 classification. In terms of how Planning Commission analyzes potential rezoning, in the development code, there's, I believe, 3 approval criteria that are laid out, and those are all identified in table 13
those are support for classification. Some subsections of that include, is it compatible with the local environment, the surrounding environment? Is it supported by the trend in development, and is it consistent with city plans? And then also, does it further public interest, and are public services and utilities provided? So the finding of facts and analysis, I'll just run through that very briefly. Planning staff, we identified that the proposed rezoning to medium industrial matches or is similar to the existing adjacent zoning directly to the north. That's the land in the city of Norton. And the city is also in the midst of talking to the two adjacent landowners directly to the west, Winthrose and Francois and Coles, about rezoning their properties to this same industrial, medium industrial zoning designation. Is it supported by the trend of development? The city recently approved a Copart development. As you may all remember, that came to Planning Commission at the end of December last year, and it needed conditional use. That site is in fact zoned I2 medium industrial. And as you heard earlier testimony at tonight's meeting, that the city worked to, on a mutual agreement to get some money, some income to help repair both Barber and Norton Avenues from that development coming through. So we kind of see that corridor as home to a variety of lighter industrial outfits, commercial services for lack of a better term, that are services that really contribute to either light industrial or other commercial entities. Is it consistent with city plans? Although the comprehensive plan, which was adopted in 2006, is silent on this specific land use at 635 Norton, it does speak on the need for appropriately situated industrial land in the city. The plan states, and I quote, much of the light industry today places greater importance on ease of access and proximity to major highways and interstates. With the city of Barberton being landlocked and nearly almost entirely developed, finding land that can contribute to industry and similar uses is at a premium. These specific parcels have some great access to I-76, maybe perhaps some of the best in the entire city of Barberton. And lastly, the plan goes on to state a more appropriate industrial land use development pattern with enhanced accessibility to Interstate I-76 should be considered. With that, it's in our opinion that this site fits that context and is appropriate for a rezoning to medium and light industrial uses in the near future. Furthering public interest, the rezoning request furthers the interest of the city by providing more options for light and medium industrial users at the end of the day, and thus allowing the city to expand our commercial base and tax base. And in terms of public services being made available, or are they currently available, there is a map that everyone can refer to. All utilities in the city are offered at the site. So historically, they've had them as they operate as the Shamrock property. So we presented this to Planning Commission. Planning Commission respectively recommended to City Council that the rezoning request for parcels, the four that I mentioned previously, be rezoned from C3 to medium industrial based on the finding of facts that were presented to you all. So I'm happy to answer any questions or take any questions from the audience as well.
Mr. Ron?
Yes.
Have we done soil tests in the area?
We have done a phase 1 and phase 2 environmental. I have those reports available to me. There's a very small, the northwestern section of the parcel has a less than a 20 by 20 square foot area that has some minor remediation that's been offered up to it. So the site's generally clean. I would say that it's a very, very light contamination, and that could actually be remediated with topsoil, which is kind of one of the more lightest.
Yeah, because it gets expensive when you get contamination.
Yeah. So the estimation that we received back in 2018, I think the least significant, I think, was 5,000, and the most significant upgrade to remove it all was, I think, 12,000.
I don't anticipate those prices have changed significantly, so. Councilwoman Deloitte?
What about the flooding in that area? How will development of that land, exasperate?
You know, so within our development code, that's something that we're cognizant of. This site, I know, we all know that that site floods, but it's not actually located within the FEMA floodplain per se. We do, I think the city of Barberton is one of the few communities in the area that has, within our development code, flood mitigation on the books. So there'll have to be some engineering study that comes about whoever chooses to develop on that site will be made aware of the flooding potential. And trust me, flooding is at the foremost in our minds when it comes to developing that site. So we don't want anything further downstream. Copart, when we started working with Copart, which was the user directly to the west down the street on Norton, one of the most, I guess, paramount to the development conversation with them was retaining the wetlands and providing relief from the floodplain, which part of their site actually sits on the floodplain. So that will be pertinent to this conversation as well. Councilman Hyde.
Thank you, Director. Since you've been in the midst of talking to landowners to the west, how receptive are they to rezone their own properties to I-2?
Mayor and I met with them, I believe, last Tuesday, and Wintros was receptive. Coles, who also owns Francois, they were going to have an internal conversation. So the Barberton Community Foundation across the street, the Armory is actually zoned the RT40, and they've actually approached us since finding out about the public notice that they would like to be considered for rezoning, which I think makes that property a little bit more in terms of the end user that can go there. And we want to be cognizant of the park as well, but we're talking to them as well. So.
Thank you.
Does anybody in the gallery have any questions? Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Are there any other questions or comments? Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this public hearing is closed at 8:22 p.m. Okay, we have another public hearing. And this one will be with Mr. Little and Mr. Trevor Hunt. This is a public hearing of the Barberton City Council. Today is Monday, June 7th, 2021. The time is 8:22. Zoning map amendment, 11.26 acre site at the southwest corner of Eastern Road and Fairlawn Road, parcel number 01-160160. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Greer.
Present.
Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Mrs. Angela.
Here.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
Mr. Jaber.
Here.
Mrs. DeBevick.
Here.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mrs. Coburn.
Here.
Okay, Mr. Hunt and Mr. Little, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council. I'll just briefly introduce this to council, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Jim Little, the developer. So, as mentioned, this site is for the rezoning of parcel 01.16060, and it's to be rezoned from community center commercial C3 to residential single-family detached with an RS50 designation. Similar to the last proposal, this came before Planning Commission on May 17th, and it was recommended for approval before council this evening. I probably won't go into as many details in terms of the finding of fact, but I'll just real briefly walk council through the site, and again, then I'll turn it over to Jim, and I'll be available for questions as well. So this is another unique site where there's a border shared with the city of Norton. Directly to the north is Clinton Aluminum. We're all quite familiar with that. That's zoned actually
I-1 light industrial. To the south is also City of Norton is zoned to agriculture. And then to the east, you have the New Haven development. It's zoned single family. I'm sorry, that's not the New Haven, well, I'm sorry, that is the New Haven development. And then to the west is actually zoned light industrial. The use is light industrial, sorry for mixing my words. The use is light industrial, but it's actually zoned to agriculture, AE. So the parcel in question is again, located on the southwest corner of Fairlawn and Eastern Road. And it was previously slated for mixed-use development. There was a proposal for an apartment building with ground floor retail when the plan was done for New Haven. Over the years, Mr. Little will attest to this. I think that there's a realization that although we'd like to attract that development, there wasn't a demand at that particular intersection for that development. And it had been marketed as such over the years. So the proposed use is, for the zoning change, is so it can accommodate, the site can accommodate 31 single-family detached dwellings on that 11.26 acres. And then the approval criteria is the same three items I ran through previously with you. We did find, just real briefly, we did find that the comprehensive plan, although it's silent again on this particular site, the comprehensive plan did identify residential expansion adjacent to the site, the need for it in the city of, in the city of Barberton. One goal of our planning department is to maintain equitable balance between the strength and stability of our neighborhoods, as well as the establishment of vibrant and thriving commercial areas. And that's why this site was originally slated for the mixed-use development. However, like I mentioned, there's at this time the environment isn't right for that type of development. So with no market there, that's kind of the impetus behind this proposed rezoning change, which was introduced by Mr. Little, who is here with us today. In terms of furthering public interest, we do believe that the rezoning step furthers the interest of the city by providing new housing stock to the greater Barberton community. And as depicted by recent housing sales, there's a market for single-family detached housing. If this does move forward, it will have to go before the Barberton Planning Commission for a replat, a final plat for the new 31 lots. And as I mentioned on the other site, we also look at public utilities at the site. There are public utilities offered. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Jim Little, and he can talk a little bit more about the development.
May I take this away for a moment? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to represent our project. Mr. Hunt's done a terrific job of explaining it. I'm not going to reiterate all that back to you. I'm here to answer questions. Been involved with the East New Haven development from the beginning. We're proudly approaching 100 homes there. This would just essentially be a continuation of that in many ways. And they may be a little bigger homes, but they'll be similar homes. They'll be matched to the current market. That's our objective. And we want to get this, we would like to have this rezoning done in such a timely way that we can participate in the active real estate market that's with us today. None of us know how long it's going to last, but let's make hay while we can. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Is the plan for these houses to have the garage and driveway off of an alley as the other ones do in New Haven?
No.
Development?
No, they'll be off the street. We've got a preliminary plan, which I can share with you now.
Because I had some, actually quite a few residents from the New Haven area reach out to me, and that is one of their major concerns, because they're concerned that that is going to affect the value of their homes. And so, I just wanted to confirm what the plan indeed was.
In contracting world, you would describe that as a rear loading home off the alleyway, okay? There's areas of New Haven, which we own, that are restricted for that purpose, and we're pursuing, because they are restricted for that purpose, to finish that as a separate project, but that is not the intentions for the other neighbors. That is not the sweet spot in the market.
I know, but I tell you, that's a deal breaker for those residents up there.
That was that first development that came out with Forest City that was doing that neo-tradition type. Another question that I've, been getting calls on is, 31 homes, you're looking at building in that acres, 11 acres. The cost of lumber and the cost of, everything else going up, how do you feel about, being able to sell 31 homes?
Well, unlike some of the previous developers, we wouldn't be spending money on it if we didn't think we could sell the product. It's our money. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, like the square footage of these homes, what's that going to be?
And I expected that question, and I would say the range, although it's not been decided, is 1,800 square feet. Again, that's a market decision, what we can sell in that area. We don't want something too small nor too big. It's gotta have resale value and financing suitability.
And the yard space, what are the dimensions going to be like? What is the frontage?
I don't have that in my head, but it's all within the city zoning and code requirements, which govern that.
Excuse me, on that particular corner, how many streets is it going to entail? Like, you're going to have streets coming off of either Eastern or Fairland, correct?
I don't want to give you the wrong answers, so let me look at my picture.
Okay.
We've had more than one project going, all sort of.
Yeah, I heard you're a busy guy. But that's a good thing.
I hope so. This is not the finished product, keep in mind, okay? But it's well within the scope of it.
Pass it.
We can pass that one, I'll start another one on this side, so it'll go twice as fast. And other questions while we're waiting for that?
Is this double cars? Double garage?
So they're all.
Is it a single garage? Oh, that's
Well,
depending on,
Mark, call it 1.5, call it a small 2, it's not gonna be a 1. I mean,
Okay.
One's,
Mr. Little,
yes,
we're having 2 zoning changes up there, correct?
Yes, they have to have.
yes.
Yes, okay, the second one, the one that I'm more concerned about,
Okay.
is don't we have an agreement where we're only supposed to have, rear loading,
That-
and that's gonna stay the same, correct?
That is correct, and that's for a separate time, if you allow me time, I happen to have with me the plans of what that might look like in resizing those lots. And we have an agreement signed with the HOA and the,
That's not gonna change.
awareness of the commission, of the planning commission, I believe, speaking correctly, of the intent to make those all rear loading.
Right.
All.
Right.
Okay.
That's my ward, and people have been talking to me about that, and I've been up there a couple of times, and that's what they don't want to change. They want that agreement to stay in there. Okay.
I've met with them in person, I've exchanged
Okay.
emails with them, I've assured them, and they've signed off that they understand that there will be all rear loadings on all the lots owned by East New Haven LLC. Which is-
We kind of missed part of what you were just saying about the rear loading. I thought I heard you say that they were going to redo the lots, meaning the existing lots or new lots that they don't have houses on them yet?
The hope is to resize the existing lots.
Resize it.
Okay, so let's in simple terms take 5 and make 4 out of them, so that they're big enough to put a product on that fits today's market.
Okay.
Because the whole reason we're sitting here is they're too small,
Exactly.
okay? So that's not gonna change.
Okay, but they're going to be constructed in the same manner as the ones that are
Within,
that
within
particular.
the parameters of the architectural design guidelines, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
I want to personally say thank you for investing your money and your time into the city of Barberton. Again, I'm happy to see all this new stuff going on, new chapters in the book opening up. I want to say thank you for doing what you're doing, and with Mr. Trevor Hunt, like I thanked him earlier. And keep doing what you're doing, and hopefully other council members see it too. And we're excited for this, and thank you.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure working with the city of Barberton, I must say, they've been very supportive, and very good and easy to work with, and we look forward to continuing that relationship. Hopefully we deserve that by the works that we've done. And anything to ever just let me know. We'll deal with it, yes.
Thank you. Has there been absolutely no interest in any commercial properties? Because I feel that when New Haven was built, as these folks say, there were gonna be some sort of retail and all that, and now we're switching to this. Earlier this year, we just approved rezoning a pretty good chunk of commercial over by Austin Estates into residential. And I'm fearful of losing even more C3 kind of things. Has there been absolutely zero interest in commercial possibilities in this parcel?
The amount of commercial property that's sitting vacant and that's upside down financially is incredible. And I'm not wanting to invest nor wait for that to change. I've got assets in that area now, and I've got my fill. There's enough. The commercial end of it, you've got to have enough rooftops, first of all. We're getting more rooftops, but you got to have consumers. And right now, everybody, Amazon is our commercial tenants in many ways. It's not a bad thing, it's just a change of habits. Yeah.
Can I ask
Sure.
about that, the commercial property? I'm thinking in that particular area, if you know where it is, I don't think there's enough traffic
Well, that's
to
the point.
support any commercial, retail shops or things of that nature. So I agree with you that it would be better used as residential.
So working with the projects like that, the first question asked is how many rooftops do you have by anyone who's going to situate business here in a commercial way? Yes.
I had a question. Thank you. I want to say thank you too for investing. We need it. Are these, so I just did quick math. We're looking at like a 1/4 acre lots, roughly, approximately per house-ish. It comes out to like 0.36, but I know there's retaining pond and stuff like that. Are these ordered, like, do they pay for them up front before you build? I have no doubts that you're gonna sell in this market, but are these paid for before you build, and are they all alike? How many different models of homes?
I think the best way to maybe to answer that is to think about what's across the street that's been built of the 90 plus and nearing 100. It'll be houses looking like that on lots that size. And as far as the financial end of it, that's a contractual agreement between us as developer and the builder that puts the homes there.
Mhm.
Typically, a builder pays for the lot before they start digging on the lot because they then take possession of it to do their part of the construction and then future sale of the finished product. So,
Awesome, thank you.
Mrs. Price, are we still online? Somebody's asking if we're online.
Yeah, we're still live streaming.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have the drawings here.
okay.
Does anybody in the gallery have any questions? Are there any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
This is for Mr. Hunt. I also had some concern from the residents up there about, some properties that the city owns. We must own 5, they gave me the parcel numbers, 5 parcels in, phase 1 of the New Haven neighborhood.
Right.
And what the plans were for those. I figured since we were on the topic, I could ask, what the city plans to do with those.
Mr. Little has worked out an agreement with the city to purchase those, and those are the properties that we're talking about that will be rear-loaded properties, the ones that are in the development.
So those are indeed the ones that are going to be resized.
That's what you said,
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments? Are there any other questions or comments? Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this public hearing is closed at 8:39 PM.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, thanks for your investment and for coming tonight.
Okay, we'll get into our committee of the whole meeting. I call this committee of the whole, excuse me, today is Monday, June 7th, 2021. This is a committee of the whole meeting of the Barberton City Council. I call this meeting to order at 8:40 p.m. We have a patient man waiting here. His name is Christian Willis. He's from Barberton. He's in Boy Scout Troop 110, and he is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and I appreciate you waiting. Thank you very much. He's a senior, is it Barberton? He's a senior at Barberton High School.
17 to be so patient.
That's, he did great. Up to you, Christian.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nicely done, Christian.
Thanks, we're sorry.
Thank you very much.
I'm gonna have to give them volunteer hours now.
Really?
I'm gonna have to write shit and be like, yo, I gotta write.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. DeBevitt.
Here.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
Mr. Greer.
Present.
Mrs. Angela.
Here.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mr. Jaber.
Here.
Mrs. Coburn.
Here.
Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Okay, we have one citizen addressing council, if they're still here. Thanks for waiting. Mitch Podolsky, is that right?
Podolsky.
Okay. When you come up to the microphone, state your name, your address, and the reason why you're here.
Okay. Mitch Podolsky, live at 843 West Hoppigan, which, you know, it's right next to the railroad tracks, which is the reason I'm here. No problems with the tracks itself, but over the last 2 weeks, we've gotten 3 flat tires just in that amount of time. We've lived there for 3 years. The tracks were bad when we moved in, and they've gotten progressively worse to a point where it's beyond repair. It's repair upon repair. If you actually go and look at the holes, it's just rubble filling the holes. You put patch over that, it comes right out. Over that time period, I've actually walked the street, picked up nuts and bolts and everything, just threw them away. But in the last 2 weeks, I decided, you know what, this is crazy. I'm gonna start collecting them and see what I get. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to pass this around so you can get an appreciation for what actually goes on. I was surprised myself at just how much I've collected. And again, this is just 2 weeks, just in front of my house, on my half of the road, not on the other side. So what I'm here for is just to kind of make notice, ask you to maybe look into having that repaired. And when I say the tracks, the crossing, I'm not just talking about the tracks themselves, but the roadway on each side of the tracks. They're both bad. What makes it worse is that we have PSC metals just down the road. So trucks and trailers going over these bad tracks, stuff bounces out. In fact, when trailers come back from the scrapyard, the trailers actually leave the roadway even if they're going slow. It's the nature of a trailer. So any nut and bolt that's falling on there, it bounces up and it lands in the roadway. Now, if we've gotten 3 flat tires in the last 2 weeks, we're not the only ones that travel that road. It's a heavily traveled road. There are semi-trucks coming back and forth all the time, trucks and trailers going to the scrapyard. I mean, you'd be surprised how much traffic is actually on that road. I think that it would be a good idea to maybe look at doing a joint effort between the railroad, the city, and possibly even the scrapyard to have that corrected. Whether the scrapyard may even need to have one of their scale people take a giant magnet over the trailers before they leave. I mean, something needs to be done. I've actually purchased a $60 construction magnet, and I started walking the road, and I was shocked at how much I picked up. I picked up what I could see, and then went back over it, and it was amazing how much I actually got. And I do this twice a day because it's constant. The trailers go over the tracks all the time. The tracks are terrible, the road is terrible, and you can't appreciate how bad it is by just driving over it. I would invite all of you to park. Park in my yard, I don't care. Come in, I say hi to you, show you what I've done there. We've been there for 3 years and completely transformed this house. But anyway, I would invite you to go and walk and take a look at the tracks, take a look at the condition, because you can't appreciate how bad it is without actually getting out and looking at it. There's chunks of asphalt that have been just torn out. I know it's just recently patched, and these chunks of asphalt are on the side of the road. You can't repair it anymore. You can't just put patches on it. It's like trying to put, an inch of asphalt over boulders. It's not gonna work. When the plows go over the tracks in the wintertime, they tear everything up. The crossing has to be changed. I talked to a representative from the railroad, and they said they were supposed to do it last year. Nothing's been done. So I'm just here to ask you to maybe look into it and see what can actually be done there. We have a lot of tournaments, baseball tournaments at the fields over there. People coming in and out all the time, and it's just another eyesore that gives Barberton a bad name. So anyway, I'm just asking to look into what can possibly be done to fix the tracks, because I'm tired of getting flat tires. I'm sure other people get them. As a matter of fact, now that I remember this, last year there was a gentleman that was driving over the tracks, and his suspension broke, and he needed to get a tow. I mean, I'm sure that was what he relied on to get to work. And you could say, well, maybe he had a bad car. Well, a lot of people in town have bad cars, and they need them to get to work. So it's not just me living at the tracks, but everybody that drives through there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go into our committee reports. First up is Mrs. Angeloff with Planning, Annexations, and Codes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning Annexations Code met this evening. All members of the committee were present, along with council members and other guests as noted on my sheet. We had a legislation request from Mr. Trevor Hunt, Planning Director, to call for an ordinance to rezone parcel 01.166060 to 11.25 acres in the southwest corner of Eastern Road and Fairland Road from C3 Community Center Commercial to RS50 Single Family Detached. There'll be 3 readings on this because it is a rezoning, and the motion was carried. The next thing that we had was a request from Mr. Hunt, our planning director, called for an ordinance to rezone 4 parcels. It's a total of 4.33 acres at 635 Norton Avenue from C3 Community Center Commercial to I2 Medium Industry. That was the old Shamrock property. This will go 3 readings, and motion was carried. Next was a letter from Justin Falter, who works in the planning department, requesting legislation to extend the boundary of the Community Reinvestment Area District Number 2 to enable further economic growth through direct tax incentive tax exemptions for eligible businesses and property owners. He's asking for emergency wording, so to facilitate timeliness for eligible businesses and property owners. A lot of discussion with that. Had Jennifer Six, who's the Inside Advisor Group, kind of approach us and let us know that there is property out there. Malco, would like to, expand and, we don't, maybe development with B&W Jobs Ohio. And that too, motion was carried. And we had, a presentation, by Mr. Hunt regarding that District 2, that if anybody has any questions, that you're more than welcome to, call the planning department, or set up an appointment, to meet with them, and they will go over that with us. But it's kind of exciting that we do have some land, and, we possibly can do some abatement, and that's a good thing. And with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is streets, sidewalks, and lighting with Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Street, sidewalk, and lighting met today, June 7th, 2021 at 6:01 PM here in the council chambers. All committee members were present, all council members were present, and guests noted on my sheet. There was 2 requests for legislation. First request was a letter from Greg Tracy requesting legislation to enter into contract with Henderson Products Incorporated in the amount of $80,435 for the purchase, manufacturing, and installation of a body package. The truck build will be added to the existing street fleet, and emergency wording was requested, and we're going to do one reading. This legislation request and the next one I'm about ready to read are both for the first truck, just for reference. This truck will be used for hauling trailers, equipment, asphalt, and other aggregates. It will also serve as a new snow and ice control vehicle. We currently have 12 5-ton dumps, of which 10 have full snow plowing and salting capabilities, so this is going to add to our fleet. Some questions that were asked. We're expecting to have these on the road by next year. It's going to take some time to build them, and this is a lease purchase that will be budgeted, started in 2022. The motion carried, so that's coming to the floor. The next piece of legislation is it relates to this same vehicle. It is a letter requesting legislation to enter into contract with His Song Kenworth of Richfield in the amount of $87,723 for the purchase of a new 2022 Kenworth T370 truck cab and chassis. This truck build will be added to the existing fleet in the street department, and emergency wording was requested. This is going to go one reading with emergency wording. Again, this is the same vehicle, and just reiterate that the payment for this purchase will be budgeted starting in 2022, and that legislation passed. For miscellaneous discussion, gave a small update on the road program. The pre-construction meetings start next week, so we'll have a better idea of the time and restrictions and the scheduling of the road program. All residents and businesses that will be affected by the construction will receive a notice from either the city or the contractor with information regarding the construction and on their street. Again, once the meetings take place next week, we should have all this information. So we should have information at the next committee meeting. Street, sidewalk, and lighting adjourned at 6:18 p.m. And with that, I pass.
Thank you. Next up is city utilities with Mrs. Colbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. City utilities met this evening in council chambers. All members were present. We have 6 requests for legislation. The first is a letter from Craig Tracy, Director of Public Services, requesting emergency legislation allowing the mayor to amend the natural gas supply agreement with Constellation Energy. Constellation submitting the lowest rate formulation via a request for proposal. This is going to be a 3 or 4 year pricing, which will allow us to have the best prices we've had in a long time. The motion passed, and the next is a letter from Mr. Tracy requesting legislation to enter into a contract with His Song Kenworth of Richfield in the amount of $87,723 for the purchase wastewater treatment plant improvement, WWTP Phase 3B and 3C, in the amount of $5,608,908. Emergency wording is requested so that we can keep things moving in a timely fashion. They were the most competitive bid and met all our specs. That motion carried, and we will be bringing that out next week. The next is a letter from Dennis Weaver, Utilities Director, requesting an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into contract with CT Consultants for bidding and construction administration services for the wastewater treatment plant, WWTP Phase 3 and 3C, 3B and 3C. The cost is not to exceed $361,000. Emergency wording was requested. This slipped through the cracks, and design services were not included. And this is something that we want to be more cognitive of and make sure that we, when doing one reading, that we've got all our bases covered. This motion did pass. The next is a letter from Craig Tracy requesting legislation to enter into contract with Henderson Products Incorporated in the amount of $87,018 for the purchase, manufacturing, and installation of the body package. This is for the truck that we had in the beginning of this. This is the replacement truck will be sent to the street department for continued use. An emergency wording was requested. This motion also passed. And last, we have a letter from Mr. Weaver, Utilities Director, requesting legislation authorizing the Director of Finance to place a lien with the Summit County Auditor for unpaid utility services. This will include accounts more than 60 days past due and will include billing through August 20th, 2021. The emergency wording was requested to make sure that we get this into the county in time. The funds for these liens would not be collected until the second half of 2022. And most of the time when people find out that it's going to be put on their taxes, they pay the bills before it ever gets there. We do have a lot of agencies that will help, and if anyone needs the help, please call me. This motion was carried and passed, and council, we adjourned at 6:38. And with that, I pass.
Thank you. Next up is Public Welfare and Safety, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety met May 24th, 2021, virtual via GoToMeeting. We had one new request for legislation, and it was referred to finance. It is a letter from Chief Kersley requesting legislation appropriating the $910, which was a grant from the Barberton Community Foundation, from the unappropriated Fire Prevention Education Fund to the operating maintenance of the Fire Prevention Education Fund for the purchase of smoke detectors for Barberton residents. We had no miscellaneous discussion, and with that, Public Welfare and Safety will pass.
Thank you. Next up is Rules, Marketing, and Development, Mr. Shorter.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met on May 24th. We met virtual. We had no new requests for legislation. We do have pending legislation, ordinance number 43-2021, CDBG Annual Action Plan. And tonight we all got some information about the change. We did have a $9,736 change increase, and there's a pie chart on the second sheet shows the changes and where the difference was. So if anybody have any questions about that? If not, motion to make the adjourn, and I'll pass.
Thank you. Next up is Environmental Health Social Service, Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services met June 7th, 2021 at 6:38. All members were present. Other council members also noted, and guests. We had no new requests for legislation. We had miscellaneous discussion. Mr. Greer asked about the numbers, about increases about, crimes and overdoses and all that stuff. And Mrs. Fry mentioned the Akron Beacon Journal did a story a month ago. And then the law director, Mrs. Miller, stated that everything's up, from overdoses, DUIs to crime. So everything's up right now. And I'll reach out to the mayor to send them more information, and I'll forward it to Mr. Greer. And we adjourned at 6:41, sir. With that, I pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is City Properties, Parks, and Recreation, Mr. Heide.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties, Parks and Recreation met Monday, May 24th, 2021, 6 p.m. All members were present, all council present, plus guests noted. We had the late legislation request. We had to invoke quite a few rules to get this in. It was a letter from Director Patterson requesting legislation to apply for a NatureWorks grant program through the Ohio Department of Natural Resources for up to $150,000 for construction of sand volleyball courts at Tuscarora Park. It was a reimbursable grant requiring a 25% match. Because of the nature of the suspension and the deadlines, emergency wording was requested. It's going to be in the open field on the 5th Street side there. The 25% match would be a grant request from the Barberton Community Foundation. The estimate from Lewis Landscaping would be about $130,000, and then the grading for it would be about $34,000. The other pieces of legislation was a letter from Director Patterson requesting legislation to authorize the submission of a grant application to the Community Foundation in the amount of $15,000 in support of the 2021 Parks and Recreation Department programs. Emergency wording was requested to respect the foundation's deadlines. These programs will run from June to June of 2022. And with that, we had the miscellaneous discussion. The skate park, still waiting on the EPA report there. We adjourned at 6:11. And with that, I pass.
Thank you. Finance and Personnel, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Personnel Committee met tonight at June 7th, 2021. The meeting began at 7:21. We met in person in council chambers, and department heads were just holding GoToMeeting. All members of the committee were present, as well as all council members and guests as noted on my sheet. We had several pieces of legislation requested. The first was a letter from Jeremy Flaker requesting an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into contract with White Bird Insurance Company for a 1-year renewal of all insurances for the city. He is requesting that emergency wording be requested. Mr. Flaker is still working with White Bird regarding the cost, and will update council when a price is determined. Our current cost for all of our insurances is $345,000, 223. That also includes coverage for the dam, but that is under a separate umbrella, and it is only covered for up to $100. Mr. Flaker is trying to get the insurance companies to include the dam under the umbrella. They are starting to pick up dams again. Last year was an odd year. It was COVID, and insurance companies didn't want to take on all the responsibility and liability. So he informed us that Whitebird does work with other insurance companies for coverages, and he thinks that we may be able to get the dam covered again. The second piece of legislation was a letter from Mayor Judge requesting a resolution recognizing and giving commendation to the Barberton businesses for their resiliency and determination while working through the challenges associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. The third piece of legislation was a letter from Jeremy Flaker requesting legislation for the creation of a new fund called Road Maintenance Fund. Emergency wording is requested. This new fund is necessary because of an agreement see if a special fund was necessary, and it is. Therefore, that is why we're going to, establish this new fund. The fifth piece of legislation is a letter from Mr. Flaker calling for legislation authorizing the finance director to execute and deliver a lease purchase agreement with Huntington Public Capital Corporation in the amount of $342,899. This is for two Kenworth cabin chassis, one for the utilities department, one for the street department, and also, $87,018 to Henderson for the stainless steel body and snow and ice control packages, and another lease, for $80,436 for one Henderson, snow and ice control package. This is a 3-year lease going for the years of 22, 23, and 24. Huntington was the lowest bidder. This comes out to $118,000 a year, and it is going to be, the lease payment will be split between the streets department and the utilities department. This was not in the 2021 budget, but these vehicles will not be ready until 2022. Therefore, they will have to be budgeted for in next year's budget. We had some legislation that was already on the agenda, which we'll be voting on next week. The first is a draft legislation ordinance title amending ordinance number 37, 2021, employees not included in non-bargaining pay grades. This is an ordinance amending ordinance 37, 2021, which we had just, passed this year to bring the minimum wage, bring into our pay scale the new minimum wage, so we up the wages. However, most companies are paying more after COVID, and, we are having trouble getting people to take seasonal jobs. Therefore, we've decided to increase the pay. The other piece of legislation that is already voted out of committee and that we'll be voting on next week is appropriation for the fire department in the amount of $110 from the unappropriated item of the fire prevention and education fund to the fire prevention and education fund operation and maintenance budget for the purchase of smoke detectors for Barberton residents. And this was a foundation grant. This piece of legislation was provided to us by finance. In miscellaneous discussion, we discussed ordinance number 47, 2021, regarding the elected official pay for president of council and council at large. Mrs. Miller, informed us that if this piece of legislation is, we feel that it is not going to pass, that we will have to make an amendment on the floor, to revert back to the current, amounts that are paid to the president of council and council at large. There was a little bit of miscellaneous discussion about the overtime reports, and Mrs. Devitt asked about, money for computers for the law department, and Mr. Flaker informed us that there should be about $700 of the CARE Act money, remaining, and, we would have to talk to CDBG, CARES Act money, in regard to, getting a computer for the law department. I updated council on the ARP, committee meeting that was held last Wednesday. We'll have another one this Wednesday. It's moving along slowly. We're trying to define the guidelines. Mr. Greer did send in an idea about an asphalt machine, which I will present to the committee on Wednesday, and, I ask everyone to continue to send ideas to me in regard to the American Rescue, Act. And we adjourned at 7:56 PM, and with that, I will pass.
Thank you. The mayor's not here for a mayor's report. How about anything else from the good of the body? Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. A few things. First, thank you for the resident who came in, just talking about the Hopkinton and the railroad tracks. If you guys remember last year, it was, social media got involved with that, and we had some problems there before. So it'd be nice if we can follow through with that one and take care of that, Mr. Tracy, and that's Ward 5, Mrs. Coburn. Hope we can follow through with that. I appreciate it. Also, don't forget this weekend, John brought up, we celebrating summer, noon to 3 p.m., June 19th, I'm sorry, not this weekend. And it'll be at the Barberton High School, so hopefully we can see a lot of support for that and get people there. Also, thank you for Keith for all this new technology stuff. Some twerking we gotta do, and some tweaks, I'm sorry, not twerking, but some tweaks we gotta do. And hopefully we can get some stuff situated. I'll get my iPad back. I said twerking, right? That's to help that Snapchat. All right. Also, Decker Park, the water is up and running. I had a couple residents today. We're very happy with that. The water at Decker Park was up and running today, and the residents were using it. And finally, welcome back. Thank you. Long day.
Anyone else? Mr. Greer.
I just wanted to say I'm happy to be back. That's all.
Anyone else? Yes.
So two things I wanted to mention. One was in the streets committee, Mr. Greer alluded to the pre-construction meeting being next week. We are coordinating to schedule it for next week. It is not certain that it will be next week. I just want to make sure that that's out there. There's 8 or 9 different individuals that are included in this meeting, so it takes a lot of coordination to get everyone together. In relation to the railroad tracks, Mr. Podolsky contacted Councilwoman Coburn, and she contacted me. I actually met with ABC last week. We're working on trying to find a solution, trying to find some common ground on the situation. I will also look into the PSC levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I have a couple things here, and I too would like to thank Keith Witten for all your help. We couldn't have done it without you, and for sticking around. And I know you all been waiting for this, but it's the yard sale weekend, so jump for joy on that one. And with that, I adjourn this meeting at 9:13.
There's some under the desk up here, but I don't advise them. There's 2 chair pads under this desk, but I don't advise them. Okay, we're good. I'll get your copies to you, okay?
I got to remember that. Well, now that we're here, I can handle it.
There you go. Okay.
Are you guys the house with the pretty porch or the courthouse?
I need the other recorder, whoever has it.
Long day.
I know.
Should be like this a long time ago. Back here.
Thanks for sticking around, Jeff.
Thank you, dear. Okay, recorders are there.
Thanks again. See you guys next meeting.